Hey everyone, welcome back to episode 5 of Beyond the Call. Today I'm really delighted to introduce you to a mate of mine. His name is Shane Martin. Shane is a former police officer. He's the current president of Team Code Blue, which will be the background if you'll see in the video, and we'll talk about that later on. So Shane's 46 years old. He's married with a son. Over to you, Shane. Where did you grow up?
Did I ever really grow up? I can't really tell you. I grew up in a little town called Cooktown, up north of Cairns there. I lived there for the early part of my life before going on to boarding school. And then, the big bad world.
Okay. Yeah, and what did you go on to uni, or what did you want to do when you were at school?
At school, I had my, I don't know whether it was because my parents encouraged me or what, but I had my target set as becoming a lawyer. That continued through until I actually started trying to study law and realized that it was, probably not for me, or at the time it wasn't for me anyway. So I ended up going to university. I've done a Bachelor of Arts with a Japanese major. How that came about was during high school, I got a scholarship to go to Japan for 10 months, which I accepted and went over there and had an absolute ball. Had lived with a host family for a year, who I'm still great friends with. Came back, was doing a joint law Japanese degree, and got rid of the law after I found out it wasn't the right timing, and then continued on over a period of 10 years while I was working in tourism. Completed my Bachelor of Arts Japanese major.
So how old were you when you went to Japan?
I was 18. Yeah.
That's awesome. Did you speak Japanese before you went?
Mate, that's a long story, but no, not really. I did high school Japanese, but I was struggling at school in Japanese. I didn't have the reason to learn it at the time. Just learning it in classes and So I spoke very, 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 very basic Japanese when I got there. Couldn't understand much, but came back conversationally fluent.
That's awesome. I love Japan. It's probably one of my favorite places on earth, and the people are just amazing. So to go over as an 18-year-old and learn the language and immerse in their culture must have just been an awesome experience.
And it was, definitely a highlight in my life. And I'm so indebted to the family that looked after me over there. I love them like my own parents. So, yeah.
Yeah. That's the one thing I'm trying to get my kids to do, is go and travel, because you learn so much about yourself, so much about the world. So the younger you are, the more you can get out and travel. I don't think there's a downside.
That's it. 100%.
Cool. Okay, so you came back, you finished off your degree, and then you just mentioned you got into tourism.
Yeah. So I was living in Townsville for a couple of years at uni, and then moved up to Cairns because I thought it'd be a better opportunity to try and get some work. It was a bit closer to my family and stuff as well. And then ended up getting my first job was pretty cool. It was driving Hummers, military-style Hummers around in the rainforest up behind Cairns, doing tours in Japanese and English. So it was great. And it actually, because I was already conversationally fluent, it was fantastic because I got my Japanese to the next level. It was great.
Yeah, that's cool. Any good stories?
Oh, mate. Like something that springs to mind is like you get Japanese tourists coming in straight off the plane, and the first thing they do is come out for your tour. So they'd be dressed up to the nines, immaculately dressed with nice high heel shoes and all that sort of stuff. And then we'd take them out on this Hummer tour, and sometimes we use the Hummer, or most times we use the Hummer. Sometimes we use a Nissan Patrol, and sometimes the patrol wouldn't have quite the guts to get up some of the really muddy hills that we used to get up. And there were days where I was like, "Hey guys, we're all getting out and pushing," and yeah, so you get these, ladies taking off their high heel shoes and throwing them in the back, and then they all get all piling out, and like they come back muddy, but just the biggest smiles on their face because they've got involved, they've got out there.
Welcome to Australia.
Yeah, just something totally different from their world. So yeah, that's one of a million stories, but
Yeah,
yeah,
that's fun.
great fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I found them a very honourable and fun-loving people. Yeah, they're a good bunch, and yeah, certainly don't see as many as we did pre-COVID over here anymore. But hopefully that returns.
Yeah, they're starting to get a few back now in Cairns.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely been a big change in the tourism market. A lot more Chinese coming to Australia now. It's
Yeah, for sure.
quite weird when I went up there last time. There was more when I was a young fella up there working. There was lots of Japanese speaking Australians like myself getting around, and now there's lots of Chinese speaking Australians getting around. So it's kind of a bit of a change of the times.
Yeah, fair enough. And then what was next after you? How long did you do that for?
Had a couple of short breaks in tourism. Like I worked in various jobs. I drove the Hummers for a couple of years in total with different companies. Um, I ended up working on Quicksilver, the boats that go out from Port Douglas to the Port Douglas out to the Great Barrier Reef. I did that for probably about a year or so as a Japanese interpreter.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, did some insurance sales for a while. Got a little bit sick of tourism for a while, needed a break. Went out and sold insurance for a company called Combined Insurance.
Yep.
Commission only, hard work, but it was, I learned a lot through doing that. And then, I worked for a company called JTB, big Japanese tour company. That's, I think it's the number one tour company for Japanese. I did that for a fair while. And then worked for a local bloke called Jay, who started up his own business. And then, 2008 global financial crisis hits. I'd always been thinking that I could only do tourism for a certain amount of time, as it's not great income. It's okay, but
Yeah.
yeah. So I
Did
guess
you ever consider moving over to Japan again?
there were opportunities, but I didn't. Yeah. When I was younger, I was really keen to try and do it, but as time kept ticking by, I don't know. I had friends that went over there and taught English and did quite well, but by that stage, I was married, and from memory, the visa situation is quite difficult. It's hard to get a business visa when you're married, I think, from memory, and
Okay. Yeah.
so I went back over for a few short stints. I was very fortunate, or I'd say a stint for holidays. I was very fortunate enough to be able to give away my host sister at her wedding. My host family invited me over for a wedding and then surprised me with, getting to walk her down the aisle.
That's lovely.
Yeah, mate, it was wow. Yeah, it was. It was very cool.
Okay. And you said by now you were married. So when and where did you meet your wife?
Where did I meet my wife? Well, that could be a whole podcast in itself. Long story short is we met basically through friends. And we hit it off straight away. And we've been married now for 24 years. Yeah. So
It's all the same after 20
22 years. Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
She's her background was she worked as an admin officer. I think she was a personal assistant at the time for the assistant commissioner in Cairns of Queensland Fire and Rescue Services, as they were known back then.
Okay.
And I was working in tourism. We were very fortunate to meet because we came from completely different backgrounds. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then so you've kind of as you said, it was fairly limited time or it's a self-limiting time within that tourism industry. So, you know, it's hard work. And for that, you know, I take my hat off you for doing the translation on the boat and stuff like that. Because as somebody who goes over, you know, I love to travel. I've been to Japan and I've been on their things, and the English translator is just such a necessary thing. So to have it, you know, we kind of don't think about it the other way around. But yeah, just having that speaker that you can make, you know, makes all the difference to your trip. So. And it's such an important part of tourism, and I think it's an underestimated part of tourism. It's something I've never really considered in the past.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great. Like there was days when I was working out on the boat where you get tourists that would want to go for a helicopter flight. And if the seats and everything worked out, enough seats, they'd often say, "Oh, Shane, can you come up with us?" And then I'd jump on the helicopter with them as well, and you know, talk about what we're seeing. And yeah, it was good fun. But the only thing is, like I think you were sort of talking about hard work. Yeah, it's working on one of those boats is very much Groundhog Day. You're doing exactly the same thing day in day out, same questions. And yeah, I think there is an expiry date with working in one of those industries because yeah, especially when you're working big hours with not the greatest amount of financial reward. Yeah, you sort of it's easy to get burnt out, and I experienced burnout a few times. So yeah,
I think it's something you have to be able to at least put on an enthusiastic face.
yes,
Because for them it's their first experience.
yes, yeah, and there's some days where it's very very hard. But
yeah, absolutely.
Lots of silly questions like what time does the 3 o'clock bus leave, and you know, all that kind of stuff. And yeah.
It's funny the first time, and then it gets you wear a bit thin, and that's when it's time to get out.
Yeah.
Okay. So what came after that?
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, the financial crisis hit in 2008, and I was starting to think that it was time for me to, as I mentioned before, grow up. So I thought, oh yeah, I'll try and get a job with Queensland Fire and Rescue. Reason being, you know, 4 on, 4 off, and they know their roster's aged in advance. And my wife was very encouraging, saying, you know, that'd be an ideal career. And so yeah, I prepared myself to start getting ready for. Well, I did the application and started getting ready for the interview process and all their testing and stuff like that. And I was in the process of doing that. I'd done my fitness testing. I was just basically waiting for an opportunity to get an interview. And from memory, I had to mention which locations I was prepared to work in advance. And I think I put down like places like Cairns, Innisfail, and Mareeba from memory. Thinking, oh, I don't want to get any further out west than that. And yeah, anyway, so I was waiting for a spot to come up. And I can't remember who suggested it, whether it was my wife or I did it myself, but it was like, oh, I might just apply for the police to just basically get some experience, because I've never taken part in a sort of a government sort of level interview before. So I thought I'd get some experience, you know, just have a practice interview. So yeah, I did up my application with the police, did all the physical testing and everything. Not really expecting too much. And then sure enough, I go down for the interview, and within, I think it was only like 3 months or so, I went from applying to being accepted into the academy here in Townsville.
Okay, and what about the fiery? How long was that process where you didn't even get to the interview?
Look, it's a while ago now, but I think it was about the 6 month mark.
Okay.
Yeah, from memory, when I got accepted into the police, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, look, yeah, I was definitely interested in becoming a police officer. Just it wasn't my my first idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought, oh well, I'll go and join the coppers, and surely that'll be good on my resume for reapplying for a fire, becoming a fireman.
Okay. So did you withdraw from the fire process?
No, I didn't actually withdraw. I didn't actually withdraw. I remained in their system.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Still
basically,
waiting for that call.
yeah, no, there was there was no phone call. But yeah, I kept thinking, oh, all right, I'll just do the academy, police academy, and then I'll finish that, and then I'll switch over.
Yeah. Okay. So you went to the academy in Townsville or in Brisbane?
I went to the academy here in Townsville. Started in May 2009.
Okay. And what was that experience like?
Wow, it was really good. The everyone that I'd meet that was already a police officer that had gone through one of the academies goes, "Oh, you're so lucky to be in Townsville. It's the better academy. It's smaller. It's yeah, it's a bit more relaxed. And
Where was home for you at this time? Was it in Cairns or
yeah,
where were you living?
I was living in Cairns, and
Okay.
my son had just been born. He was born 2 weeks before I started the academy.
Oh wow. Okay. And
And
it's 6 months residential, the academy, isn't it? Is it
from
around
memory,
6 months?
yeah, it was 6 or 7 months back then. I can't. Yeah, we did basically went from November. Sorry, from May until December was when I went through. So yeah,
Yeah.
7.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, my son had just been born, and I moved down to come to the academy down here for that
Yeah.
period.
Okay.
Yeah,
That must have been tough.
it was. Yeah, celebrating like the highlight of your life, having your first child born, and then coming down here. Yeah, it was tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was sort of 2008. There wasn't really much video conferencing back then, is it? Could you did you?
2009. Nah, mate. No, there was from memory there was nothing like that really. Like it might have been around, but no, whether no one did it or not, I don't know.
Yeah, it wasn't mainstream. Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. And did they come down? I know you got like weekends off and stuff occasionally, but did they come down? Did you get to see your son much during that period?
Yeah, they came down every so often. I went up every other weekend. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was good. My wife moved in with her parents for a while. And yeah,
Excellent.
I lived at the Bessel Lodge at the castle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you've spent your 7 months in there. What when you've gone through it, did you find it hard? Did you find it easy? What was the experience like as far as the job or the learning?
The academy itself, or just
Yeah.
yeah. So the going through the academy, mate, was yeah, it was easy. To be honest, it wasn't very challenging at all. The yeah, I do when I say that, I feel sorry for the guys that were. So I was 31 at the time, and so my fitness standards were a little bit less than the poor guys that were in that early age bracket, because I was right at the cutoff for the sort
Yeah.
of the intermediate sort of fitness test level.
Yeah.
The poor fellas had to do that obstacle course in a pretty fast time. Yeah, I didn't find myself having to um, exert myself too much in any of the areas of study or that. I think I focused a lot on making the key friendships and stuff I did at the academy, and
Yeah.
yeah, I've got mates that are still best mates now from there. Yeah, the academy was actually a really good time.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I was going to ask what about the camaraderie. I do hear a lot of people saying about the academy that it's some of those guys are mates for life.
100%. So yeah, when we were actually sitting in the dining room at the Bessel with the inspector from the academy, Inspector Murray Verrills, his name was. He was talking to us all, and he said, "Oh, look around this room, because there's going to be people in here that are going to be your friends for life."
Yeah.
And he was 100% right. And if you are speaking to aspiring and current recruits at the academy, guys, yeah, make sure you keep in contact with those guys that you went through the academy with, because they'll become some of your most trusted friends, and people that you can actually speak to when times do get tough, when they potentially will.
Yeah. So good advice. Did you when you graduated and you became a sworn police officer? Where were you posted to? And did any of your college mates go there?
Yeah, I got posted at Cairns. I
Yeah.
asked for Cairns and got it. And did I have any friends that go up there? Yeah, there was a few that went up with me. Um, yeah, and yeah, it was Cairns was a quite a challenging place. And I tell you what, the difference from going through the academy to working the actual job is huge. It's you
Yeah.
go from, to put it bluntly, you go from having a paid holiday to study, to yeah, people's worst days of their lives. So it's and I don't think any amount of time at the academy can prepare you for what you are going to face.
Yeah. So did you have good sort of mentors early on?
Yeah, there were great mentors up there. Yeah, I was very fortunate that yeah, I had some good people around me. The the biggest thing that was challenging your first year, back then you used to have to focus on completing a diploma in public safety while you were working, and you're already working a job that's brand new, and there's just so many variables to absolutely everything. There's so many different forms and computer systems and stuff, and it's trying to pack all that in, and absorb all that at the same time as trying to complete this book that needs to be done. Everyone calls it the book.
Yeah.
It's basically a diploma of public safety, and all the criteria and stuff that you have to meet, as well as getting used to going to things that you see in movies and think, oh yeah, that's yeah, and yeah, it's a massive slap in the face. Like, whoa,
Yeah.
yeah, and it does test you. Man, I tell you what, if you got any weaknesses, you find out about them pretty quickly.
Yep. Yep. And you find that other people bring them out, or you realize them yourself?
A combination of both. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a combination of both. But yeah, you definitely become very, very much aware of what you're good at, what you're not. And
Do you remember the first day on the job? What do you remember? Any sort of jobs you went to first day on the job?
first day. Yeah, so I started work on Christmas Eve, 2009 from memory. First day, I can't remember if this was the first day, but I know it was very, very early. I went to my first dead body, as we call it. Sorry, that's just the blunt way of calling it. So yeah, I went to that. Now, when I was at the academy, you're supposed to go through and have your first experience at the morgue seeing a dead person. We didn't have that, which I won't go into, but there was a reason we didn't have that happen. So yeah, it was my first time to see a dead body, and then being asked by forensics to jump in and move it around and stuff like that was quite confronting.
Yeah.
And then dealing with not only that yourself, but also dealing with taking a statement from the next of kin, who was very distressed.
Yeah.
That combination was like, wow, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything prepares you, or there's no. I don't know if there's any training you can do that prepares you to deal with other people's grief.
No.
It's the hardest thing, and yeah, 20 years later, I still struggle with that part of the job. It's just it's so raw, it's so empathetic. It's a really tough thing, and there's nothing you can do except experience it to sort of give you a little bit of experience of what's the right thing to say, what's
Yeah,
the wrong thing to say.
yeah. Yeah, mate. And then on top of that, you're throwing in shift work. So yeah, tired. Yeah. Um, yeah, the whole thing is very confronting, very challenging. And I really, really strongly doubt that the general public has really any grasp on how confronting it is. Yeah.
No, I agree with you, and that's partly why I do this podcast, is to sort of so people can understand the process of what happens with, and it's not just police, it's first responders, it's emergency nurses, tow truck drivers. They get to
Yep.
see some awful stuff as well. Fireys, obviously, corrections officers. We'll talk a bit later on how we come to know so many of those. So you're a year in, or you're a few months in. Did you have an idea of what sort of policing you wanted to do?
No, I remember my first year just I suppose it felt like being a little bit like being in high school where you're like, can I just graduate already? Because it does drag, on a bit because you've got this book, and honestly, I couldn't really think too much beyond that. Yeah, the book was so very, very consuming, trying to get my first year complete, trying to work out who I was as a police officer as well.
Yeah.
Was challenging. I didn't really have any aspirations as to really what area I wanted to go into then. I don't think. I think
Yeah.
basically getting out of my first year was the goal early on.
Yeah. In that first year, did your family notice any differences?
I'm sure they would have.
Yeah.
I don't think it was actually ever spoken about. I know that I started needing to have alone time a lot more. And I
So
did
you
that.
noticed the differences?
Yeah. I don't really remember them talking about it, but I'm sure they would have noticed that all of a sudden I started going fishing.
Okay.
And I'd go and sit down at the jetty in Palm Cove, really just wanting to be left alone, um, to the
Just the
point where
therapy of fishing.
if someone walked past and like if you could walk past, oh hey mate, you catching anything? I want to throw them. I just did not want to engage with anyone. I just wanted to have quiet, be with myself time. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you find it, like at this early stage, did you find that you were struggling to switch off? Like if you went out in public, even in the first year, you were
Oh
struggling?
yeah. Yes, and you're not taught how to switch off either. But like,
No, you're taught how to switch on.
yes, yeah, and I had lots of trouble switching off. Like, yeah, and it gets more and more intense. I found as you go through your career, but yeah, I think I remember within the first month starting to have trouble switching off.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah, definitely had more trouble wanting to engage with family. I don't really know. I'm guessing it was because I felt that they wouldn't understand anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, the first year of just back to that it was just really challenging. And I had no idea how hard it was going to actually be when I signed up and
Yeah.
cruising through the academy. We're having this great time. We're making friends, and weekends are off, and yeah, it was a big awakening. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you was there any stage during that first year that you thought this isn't for me, or no, you were pretty damn sure that's where you wanted to go?
It's funny you asked that question because I was actually preempting that question just then. Yeah, I actually walked in at one point. I'd had enough.
Yeah,
When I spoke to the education and training people, said that yeah, um, yeah, it was pretty challenging, and they're like, oh no, it's normal. And they said, oh, how are you sleeping? And I said, not very well. And then they said, oh well, yeah, I had a conversation with I won't identify the person, but I had a conversation with someone that suggested to me that I can't remember the exact percentage that was mentioned, but they said that yeah, I think it was like around 70 to 80% of police officers are on some kind of medication or sleep medication or something like that to help
yeah,
with dealing with everything.
yeah.
And I think I went and got my first prescription of temazepam around that time. So yeah,
Yeah, I've heard estimates of up to 20% of first responders could be on benzos.
uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's a pretty scary that's a pretty scary statistic, and I'm not sure whether that's just a result of rotating shift work or the nature of the job or the combination of both.
the
It's a terrifying reality.
definitely the combination for me.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, just wanting to be out. I think one thing I've experienced away with my career was always wanting to have enough rest so that I can function at a level where I'm okay. But
yeah,
um, as we all know, that's not always possible.
yeah, yeah. Especially as we go into the smaller stations. So, so we're in Cairns for our first year. You've done you've managed to slog through, and you finished your book.
Yeah.
Did you when once you finished your first year, did you then get posted, or do you ask? How does that work? Do you ask for a transfer?
Yeah, so towards the end of your first year, all the first year constables that get assigned to the station gather in a room, and the I can't remember which officer it was, but someone comes and basically says to you guys, says to everyone, "Hey guys, all right, you're going to graduate soon. Congratulations. Those of you who are single and don't have really any compassionate reasons, you're going to places like Arakoon, Torres Strait, Hopevale, um, probably like the places that you probably aren't going to be able to go to the cinemas and have a iced latte on the weekends."
Yeah, yeah,
And then yeah, I was able to request for like compassionate reasons that I go to work in Cooktown, my hometown.
yeah,
I had an inspector for that area pull me into his room one day and say, "Hey, it's probably not a good idea going to your hometown, especially when you're so junior, especially being a small town." And the other options,
For those that don't know, what's the population roughly of Cooktown?
about 2,000. Look, I couldn't tell you exactly at the moment, but it's
Yeah,
around 2,000. I think it's
yeah,
grown slightly, but yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Okay.
so, um, yeah, I replied to that inspector saying, "Hey, look, I'll go somewhere else, but are there any places that have accommodation for families?"
Yeah,
And from memory, there wasn't. That Cooktown was the only one that came with a house that my family could live in. So yeah, early January 2011. Yeah, I ended up yeah, packing up the house and heading up to Cooktown.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. When you said when you first mentioned to me that you went to Cooktown early on, that's my thing. I didn't realize it was so small. With like just a couple of thousand, and I remember once having a conversation with a veteran, and we often compare, how it what the difference is between our jobs, we obviously all see traumas and that sort of thing. And one of the things, he said, one of the big differences is that we often have to treat people we know. And I can imagine that would be, and that would be why your inspector was sending that email. When you're in a town of 2,000, you're going to be treating, talking, arresting, interacting with people that you know and your family knows. And that must have been, how did you feel about that before you've started?
Before I started, being completely honest, I didn't even really think about it. I was just like, okay, cool. I'm going to finish my first year and I'm going to get to go to Cooktown. I've got a block of land up there. I can work on that on the weekends. I didn't really I suppose I didn't completely ignore it, but it wasn't like in the factors of things. It was like, that'll be right. Yeah.
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 So in retrospect, was the inspector right? Would you send the same email?
He actually called me to his office. That's how important he felt it was. Would I send the yeah, I wouldn't recommend going to a town where you've either grown up or you have family and stuff. It does have its own challenges. Yeah, I'd say no. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like a complete deal breaker, but yeah,
You've got to think very carefully, and it's one of those easy in retrospect type of things.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So how was it working at Cooktown? Like, anything jump to mind? Like any jobs, any interactions, any difficulties?
There's heaps of things. The first positive I'd like to talk about up there was the officer in charge, basically your boss at the station.
Yep.
I was very fortunate to have a bloke called John MacArthur. He's a senior sergeant who was in charge of the station, and he was very, very good at policing in a small town. He had a very good way about going about things, and I learned a lot from him. Yeah, and then I was fortunate enough to work a short stint at a little town called Wudjal, which is just south of Cooktown. And I had another good mentor there, Luke Tulax, Sergeant Luke Tulax. I'm not sure what rank he's now. I'm sure he'd be senior sergeant or inspector. They were great mentors. They really showed me how to best deal with heightened situations to get a desired outcome without heightening the situation any further and basically getting injured or causing more drama. But still get the same result that you would anyway.
So they taught you that from witnessing?
Yes. Yeah. From witnessing, not going to a scene and getting everyone too excited, just cruise along.
Yeah. What's the biggest skill needed to be a police officer in your opinion?
It depends on where you're working. Certainly it depends on where you're working, but communication is 100% like the biggest skill that you need to have. It becomes more and more important the smaller the location you work, in my opinion. Especially when potential.
You've got such limited resources, that you're at. I think I agree. I've always said our job from a paramedic side, but it's exactly the same, is 90% common sense and communication. The rest of it's fluff. The rest of it's the nice to and that you don't use in 90% of your jobs. Yeah. Communication and common sense will do your job 99% of time.
Yeah. And I think very early on having a mentor like John MacArthur and Luke, and there's so many others that come along as well. Brendan Pousty, who's unfortunately no longer with us. Just watching how they for example, one night we get called to go to a house in Cooktown because, from memory, it was a mother was very concerned about her son who had decided that he'd go and get a large metal pole and start running around the house and threatening to break things and stuff like that. So you hear that kind of call over the radio, thinking, "Here we go, I'm going to be in for a scrap here." Anyway, we went along with this Sergeant Brendan. You might have been a senior constable at the time. Yeah, with Brendan Powsey. And we get there, and sure enough, there's this fella out the front of the house with a metal pole, and he's pretty arced up. And I'm starting to get ready to like to, start communicating and deal with the scene. And then Brendan just goes into his pocket, reaches out a cigarette. "Hey mate, you a bit worked up. You want to have a cigarette?" And I'm just like looking at him going, "What?" And then the guy's like, "Oh, okay." Puts the pole down, takes a cigarette. And then rather than having to, we're totally in our rights there to use force, do all sorts of things. But rather than going through all that, he had a cigarette, then we ended up finding out that he wasn't feeling too well or too happy about life and needed some help. So we ended up taking him up to the hospital and getting him support. And just being able to de-escalate things, especially when you're in small towns. I think it's like paramount in your abilities as a police officer. And through my career, I've seen various strengths and weaknesses in that area. And it's caused me some conflict in my times about how to go about dealing with things. Different things, but yeah.
I've come across various, I mean, in every walk of life, but I've come across police officers that even from day to day, some days they've got the patience of an angel, and you're wondering how the hell you haven't managed to go hands on with this guy, and then the next day, they're hands on when you're like, did you really need to do that? But so it really varies, even from person to person, because you never know what's going on in people's lives external to the job, and that can have an effect on how you can react to a job.
It's I remember talking to a ex-cop that I went to school with, and I found out he went through before me. And I remember him saying, because he pulled out during his first year, and I said, "What caused you to drop out?" And he said, "It's the big grey areas where there's policies and laws and everything, but then there's that little gap of an area where you might still be acting within your policy, but it's too much, and vice versa." And
community policing is slightly different, especially small community.
And I really wish that there was a bit more of a bridging course or training for police that are going from the city to country towns, because I think it'd be beneficial for like everyone, the community, the police officers themselves, and their colleagues, because at the moment there isn't.
When did you first work on your own? Was that when you went out to that small town?
Cooktown? No, I worked
or Woodville.
No, Woodville I didn't work by myself. That was the partner. Cooktown was my first time to work by myself. It was because someone called in sick, and it was me. I was very fortunate that colleagues were like, "Yeah, no worries. If you have a problem and you want to run something by me, just give me a call." Actually, you know what? Wind that back. I think my first shift in Cooktown, I remember going in and arresting someone by myself. Someone that was just causing a bit of a ruckus at a pub somewhere, and I was completely. Oh no, I had a police liaison officer with me to give me a hand who can't do anything, because they're not allowed to unless you really, really get stuck. And
So for those that aren't aware, just to fill in, people aren't police or anything, a police liaison, and correct me if I'm wrong, they're often Indigenous people that are not sworn members of the police, but they basically are there to assist you and be a intermediary between the Indigenous community and yourselves.
exactly right. Yeah, there's a few, not just Indigenous, but yeah, it's primarily Indigenous. There are Japanese ones. There's a Japanese one in Cairns. And yeah, I think if you go down to Brazil, there are different. There are Indian. I think there are Chinese police liaison officers. But yeah, up north generally, they're Indigenous.
So
And
gateways between policing and community, various community.
Yep. So yeah, I remember going in and dealing with that on my first shift, and yeah, putting someone more in the watch house. Yeah, that was an experience. Because I never really.
Was that a physical arrest, as in it needed to get physical, or was that?
Yeah, it got. When I say physical, it required hands-on, put handcuffs on. There wasn't actually any so much fighting or anything. It was just a sort of passive aggressive resistance. And but I remember one of my shifts in my first year. Oh, sorry, second year in Cooktown. Going out and patrolling by myself, and it's it's a funny thing, and I know that I'm sure that all first responders talk about this thing, but it's that big unknown of what could come in, and it could be absolutely anything. Yeah.
The thing we both love, and as you develop PTSD, the thing you hate about the job is that you never know what the job is going to be, what the day's going to be. So did you you obviously this inspector's biggest fear was people dealing with people did that happen?
Oh yes, it did. So yeah, I was first response to a drowning in Cooktown, and the person that I ended up doing CPR on was a friend from school, a childhood friend's mother, and she didn't make it. So
sorry to hear that. That's
one thing.
Did you help out Ambos a lot?
Yes, we in Cooktown there was a number of times where you get from memory the term is Queensland Ambulances staging. Is that the word? Yeah.
That's our word. Yep.
And which basically means please get there and make sure that the location is safe before ambulance can go in there and do their job. And we did a lot of that. I think there was more of that in Cairns from memory in my first year, but Cooktown was generally speaking a bit more. A bit less violence back then. A little bit now, but there was less violence.
I think also with those smaller towns, from my personal experience, you kind of knew the places that were the violent ones. So as paramedics, if we were told to stage at a particular place, if we knew those people and we knew those, and we'd have previous relationships with those, we could make our own assessment whether or not we needed to stage, or if it's Uncle Robert who's we've been to 15 times and he's drunk. He might be one of those ones that's all verbal, but you're still happy to go in and de-escalate because you know what he's like. You've got that shut up, come on, let's go. And you treat them with a joke and a and you can de-escalate. So I think whereas in your bigger urban areas, you don't have those relationships with people, so the unknown is a lot more scary, and therefore, I'd rather wait for the coppers to get there, which is when it's for a drunken call is not a drama. We'll sit there for 20 minutes, half an hour. When it's for a serious call and you know time is of the essence, it's bloody hard not going in.
I bet. I can imagine. Yeah, yes, I completely understand how you'd be feeling sitting in the car, and yeah, it'd be, yeah, yeah.
And both services are flat out. So there's there's never a matter of us going, where the hell are they? We know that the Blues are, the boys and girls in blue are just as busy as we are. And there's plenty of times that you guys are waiting for us as well when it's to transport mental health or whatever the case may be. I know it can be very frustrating, and you guys waiting, so both teams are definitely flat out and empathizing with each other on how busy it can be. You mentioned about doing CPR, and I think people underestimate how many times police actually do CPR. How many times do you reckon you've done it?
I believe it's 3 or 4.
Yeah.
With no success of bringing the person back each time.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's when you, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that can relate to this that have done first aid courses that might not necessarily be a first responder. You're in this sort of room, and the assessors trying to keep things light, and having a bit of a joke, and you're doing your compressions and stuff, and the dump is a little dummy there, and it's like it's very, very separated from what the actual reality of doing CPR on someone is. So I haven't had the fortune of bringing people back. I know others have, and I found myself actually really beating myself up for, I'm going to say, about 6 months after this lady had died. I felt like I hadn't done my job properly.
The what ifs.
Yeah. There's a lot more that goes into that particular incident, but it was basically, I felt really terrible afterwards.
Do you think they prepare you enough for those scenes of doing medical assist, like where you are first on scene, you are doing CPR and that type of thing? Do you think you're prepared? Or is it more policing?
Yeah, so we're not really trained. No, like I'm thinking about all the scenarios and stuff you do at the academy. I don't recall any of them being CPR related. That's more of your first, like that's pushed off into that's first aid sort of stuff that's done by Queensland Ambulance or whichever place you do your first aid course through. I think I've seen since going through the academy. I remember probably in 2014, 15 maybe. I know that they started looking at during your firearms and stuff training. They started doing training for dealing with sucking wounds and stuff like that, but there still wasn't anything from memory, there was no training like you do scenarios and stuff. There was like, you have to shoot someone, and then basically you just tell the instructor, oh yeah, now I'm doing CPR and this, I'm trying to, but actually, I think I think they could do better in that area. I'm thinking it's time and resources as far as getting all that done is massive, but
I think people underestimate how many times police do CPR, and that doesn't necessarily mean that the ambos aren't on scene. But in these smaller towns, when there may be 2 ambos on scene, there may be 2 police, 3 police, and there may be a few fireys that eventually rock up. We've got to get them out of bed first.
Exactly. We love you, fireys. We love you. Now back to bed. Back to bed.
So, but even when you have maximum medical resources, as of 2 paramedics, maybe even a critical care paramedic, we rotate through CPR so much that inevitably the fireys and the police are going to be doing CPR on people. So med assists are such a huge part. And the funny thing is, they don't call us for police assists, but they expect you to come for med assists. Same as the fireys, they don't come up they don't ask us to go into the hot buildings, but they certainly ask them to come and help us, because that's the human aspect of it. And I think that's one thing I've been surprised of when I've been going through these podcasts and talking to people and things, is how little you seem to be. It's a normal first aid course, and then it's sort of like you don't realise how, and people don't understand that when we go to out of hospital cardiac arrest, how few do survive.
Yeah. Yes.
Not too many police officers would have got too many saves.
It's when after. So once again, I've got to thank my boss, because I think he noticed that I'd been affected by the incident. He actually got. So I don't think we had a peer support officer at the station. So I think he got the paramedic, who was a peer support officer, to talk to me about the incident. And he told me the odds of what it is to, make someone come back to life after giving them CPR. It was very, very low. And I felt a little bit better, but still, I was still killing myself inside. I was like, myself.
So I believe the like they are improving almost every year, but the stats are less than 20% of out of hospital cardiac arrest make it to walking out of hospital. In 20 years, I think I've had 5, maybe a couple more, but around 5, and done CPR hundreds of times. It is really low. And a lot of it's down to luck. Where are they? And obviously, the more defibs that are available, that's going to make a difference. But by the time we get there, it's often, we are pushing shit uphill. But we all give it our damnedest. That's the one thing. We go to any of these scenes, and everyone works as a team.
I'm guessing the reason why you're not told that the stats are so low is because, like, for example, in your training, like the facility goes, oh, by the way, guys, only about 20% of your people are going to survive. Do you think that people would put less effort in? I don't know.
I know what you mean.
Why they don't prepare you for knowing that, hey, you didn't cause them to die. It was they were dead. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. And that's it. It does take a while to develop that knowledge of they're already deceased. We're trying to fight that. A cardiac arrest is ultimately they are deceased. We are trying to fight that and bring them back, rather than. But our brains, especially early on, are we didn't save them. And they're two totally different mindsets, and going from one to the other is bloody hard. I did hear Damo and Schultze out of Two Ordinary Coppers. I like the way they said it. They said it's not our tragedy, and that's something I'd never heard of before. And I do like that saying for the mindset. I'm someone who did empathetically get involved with too many jobs. I find it very hard to shut off and not be empathetic. I wish that I wish I absorbed that and heard that and took it on board earlier, that it's not our tragedy, because I kind of made it my tragedy, and that definitely has an accumulative effect. What's a good job you went to in what's a good memory of being in Cooktown?
Good memory of being Cooktown. Oh, good memories of being Cooktown. Okay. That's very easy. There's 2. One, it's a good memory because it was a good time. And that was going and working at the Laura races. And basically myself and one of the sergeants at the station went out, and police
paint a picture. Where's Laura for those that one of the Laura races for people that don't know?
Yeah, of course. So Laura is about an hour and a half, 2 hours out of Cooktown to the sort of southwest. And it's a tiny little country town. I think the population there would have to be like about 200, maybe. It's a very rural area, and they have a big Indigenous dance festival there, and a big race event there each year. And basically, the population probably multiplies by 100-fold or so. And
Yeah. So it's sort of maybe people might know the equivalent would kind of be a smaller version of the Big Red Bash and things like that. So it's obviously
yeah,
that's a bigger event, but this is
yeah,
the akin in a smaller scope.
yeah, and that is, yeah, those events there, generally speaking, there's not too much police work to do. It's more just monitoring the situation.
Yeah.
And dealing with a few odd jobs that pop up, but then normally not too exciting, so to speak. It's more
Yep.
more of a community event, and
I've worked a few of them and they can be bloody good fun.
yeah, yes. I one thing looking back now, people ask me what do you miss most about policing, and I'd say going away for really good community events.
Yeah.
Are one of the big things I miss, because it was a change from the norm. You'd be at work in a different location, you work your shift, and then if you're able to, you'd go out and join in the event, go out there and go and watch the races if you could after you finished work. And sometimes you'd be actually
Yeah.
watching the races while you're working. But yeah, really enjoyed those events.
I think one of my favourites that I worked in that type of thing was the Carigna races.
All right.
So Carigna is about 50, 60K south of oh geez, just outside Hughenden.
Oh yeah.
Begins with P. What am I thinking? We've got Torrance
Headland
Creek then.
or Prairie.
Prairie, sorry. So
Yeah. Yeah.
just a mind blank, sorry guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's about 60K south of Prairie or Torrance Creek, one or the other. I think it was Prairie. And people used to fly in, and it's held on a weekend every year, and they call it the Carigna Picnic Races, I think it's called. And we used to we used to camp out there, and it was a great weekend. And we would be on the track. It's a bush dirt track, so you're following the jockeys on the dirt.
Yeah.
So you've got to make sure you give them plenty of room, so that the first time you know a jockey's fallen off is when you feel a bump. So you got to be a couple of 100 meters behind the thing, and then before the race, we've got to do a run of the track to make sure there's no kangaroos. So yeah, and then as soon as the last race is done, you clock off. You're there as part of the community. You're socialising. You might have a beverage or two, and you have dinner with them, and they're just fun.
Yeah,
real fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I really used to get really excited about any trip away. Even the ones that were like were for an incident. It was still great. I really enjoyed the camaraderie.
Yeah. Used to always recommend people go on deployments just for exactly what you're saying. It's something different.
Yeah.
And you'll learn something from everyone. You'll meet and you learn new people. I used to take any deployment I could.
Yes. Yeah. Me too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So you've done. You said there was another good job or something. Yeah. Another good memory.
It was the biggest job of my career, I believe.
Okay.
And that was being first response to a murder up in Palmer River, which is pretty close to the law of it. It's on the basically just off the highway between Cairns and Cooktown.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some gold prospectors were working, were doing some detecting in the Palmer River itself, on a property there, and one of them got shot by the owner of the property.
Okay.
This story could be like a whole podcast in itself, because it was a big job. But
now, just to clarify, this has been through the courts and all that sort of stuff.
it's settled, and the two offenders are currently in custody. So Yeah, that was a massive job.
So
Where
did you respond on your own, or were you with
uh,
someone?
no, we went with detectives. Well, it was one of those jobs where we got the job details the day before, and because it was going to
Okay.
require a bit of planning, we responded the next morning, and took up witnesses and um, yeah, determined, about the quality of the witnesses and working out whether or not they were telling the truth about what had happened, and then going in to try and find we thought he might have still been alive, as possibly they could have been alive at the stage, to go and find out, where he was, and then from there, get the cert guys in to arrest the offenders, and yeah, from there it was a huge job.
Yeah. Was that your first interaction with like specialised policing, as in your detectives and your cert and that type of thing?
No,
For those
no,
that
not
don't know, certs is like, I guess you'd call it SWAT. That's the
special.
term
Yeah,
most people, Special Emergency Response Team. But that's basically kind of SWAT. So people
yeah,
will
yeah.
have if they're not policing or first responders, they that will be their understanding of it. Had you been with them before? Had you dealt with them before?
Uh, in training exercises and stuff at the academy, and you sort of see them a bit in passing. Those guys seem to generally keep a bit to themselves.
Yeah,
But yeah, getting to be there when they were called in to fly in from Cairns, and then roll in at the same time as the set guys getting in to go and do the arrest.
yeah,
Um, yeah, very, very um, like exciting as far as a copper goes.
yeah,
And then to be there when they're arrested, to also taking part in the investigation. And then I actually end up using one of my hobbies was using metal detector to try and find gold. And
yeah,
actually used to do it in the Palmer River area, quite different station. But yeah, I ended up using a detector to detect the scene where we worked out that the deceased had been shot.
yeah,
And yeah, I recovered evidence of that scene there, with my experience, and having the forensics hanging around with me, and then the detectives, and we all worked together. It was really cool for like a period. I was still only like maybe just into my second, sorry, just into my
yeah,
third year of policing.
yeah,
So it was a very, very yeah, it's very cool. It was an absolutely tragic incident,
yeah.
for family, but I think there was a saying that I heard, I can't remember where I heard it. There's no greater honor than to investigate the death of a fellow human being.
I
And
remember they used to have that at the beginning of the TV show Homicide,
maybe that's where I heard it.
and
Yeah,
I totally get that.
yeah,
Yeah, that stuck with me as a kid. I never went into policing, but that saying stuck with me.
yeah. And that feeling of wanting to find for those who don't know, the deceased was never found in this matter. They never found the body. It was found
Oh, okay.
evidence at the scene where he was killed. Um, and there was a circumstantial brief that yeah, saw the offenders go behind bars. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Did you did you have any dramas processing that with them not finding the body?
I don't think
Was
so.
that something that's no good?
I don't really think so. No. I really, really wanted to find him, and there's
Yeah.
a part of me that's always thought that I'd go back there sometime, and go for a wander around, just to go some of the places that, in hindsight, I've thought about and gone, oh, I wonder if that's the spot. Not based on anything, just apart from gut feeling and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think I really had any problems with processing that. Yeah, it was towards the end of my time in Cooktown, and it was, yeah, it was, yeah, I can't think of a more um, rewarding job in my career that I've been involved in, because we actually got to have a result. And some of my work was part of the brief, and that saw these guys go behind bars.
Was
Yeah,
it a long process?
What's that? The
as in from the murder to getting them behind bars? Like,
yeah.
I mean, obviously what is it? The wheels of justice turn slow, as they say.
Oh,
But did you find it a busy process, or was it like a really long, drawn out process, or how did you find the
I was
system, so to speak?
so I wasn't really involved in anything apart from there's two parts to it. Being involved at the scene and transporting offenders to the watch house and yeah, searching the scene and locating evidence and that. Then I'd like taking notes in my notebook, and then I can't remember how long after that it was. It wasn't that long after I provided a statement about what I did,
Yeah,
and that was my involvement.
yeah,
So and this is yeah. One of the things that was a little bit disappointing is that once you take part in these investigations, that you're sort of forgotten about. If you're one of the lower ranking officers in the situation,
yes, yeah,
you're kind of. I did. I shouldn't completely complain. I did get an email from a boss saying, "Hey, you did a great job out there." But yeah, then I know there was awards and stuff given out to the people that did the arrests and stuff like that, and
yeah,
they deserve those awards. This is not me taking away from what they did. They did that, but yeah, it would have been kind of nice if everyone that was involved in that investigation got some sort of certificate, because it was such a, a, a big case, and
yeah,
there was it was a lot of work. I think I worked, it was like 16 hours or something crazy in the first, no, it was more than that. It was something crazy on
yeah.
my first day. And
I mean, bearing in mind we're going an hour and a half, 2 hours to the actual
yeah.
scene, so
I
that's
remember
both ways.
transporting the prisoners out in darkness on these bush roads.
Yeah,
And it was like a 4 or 5 hour journey.
yeah,
Um, yeah, one way, and then having to come back the next day and get back there and do more.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I think one thing we can do better is to recognize when there is a big job that, you know, where the hierarchy can, is to recognize the lower ranking officers, not just the
yeah.
senior
The
ones.
boots on the ground.
And this is not just speaking for myself. This is like throughout my career, not just me, but speaking to lots of others around me, have
Yeah,
been to some really, really, really big events and done an amazing job. But the inspectors that haven't actually been to the job will get the high fives and, you know, awards, and
yeah,
then yeah, so that's something that can be improved. It will generally boost your staff's morale, and yeah, that fuel to actually want to go along and contribute to those big jobs.
yeah, yeah. No, 100%, and I don't disagree with you. You know, for other services, that's certainly not something I haven't heard before.
Yeah,
What was your standing like in the community? What was your relationship with like the community in Cooktown at this stage? So you've been there nearly 2 years. You're obviously from there. You've got returned as a copper. What were you Shane? Were you the copper? Like how did the community see you in your eyes?
yeah, that's a very interesting question, actually. And I don't know the answer. Yeah, I think you can break that answer into two things. The one that you'd hope you'd like them to think about you, and there's the one that you think they actually are thinking about you. Look, I think my close friends, yeah, like there wasn't any change. But uh, so when I finished my first year in Cairns, going to Cooktown, I was still trying to work out who I was as a police officer, and still trying to really process the enormity of the amount of different types of jobs, their flow on to the paperwork side of things and all that. So I remember getting there early on and going, all right, what's something that I can do? So I'm working that is that I'm 100% confident in doing. That's something I can go out and do just be actually contributing to what the station is doing. And for me, that was chasing drink drivers.
Yep.
And yeah, I think, yeah, I know that I got a heap of drink drivers, and it was good, because yeah, I was making a difference. But I know that in such a small town, you get very well known quickly that, oh, he's the one that
Yep.
gets all the drivers. And yeah, each
Did you
officer,
did you ever cop any crap outside when you weren't working?
not really, no, not to my face,
Okay, that's good.
but I remember going to a golf event at the end of the year, and then someone got up and said, "Oh yeah, and Shane's leaving to go to Richmond," and then someone got out, don't let the guy hit your ass on the way out." Yeah, yeah. So yeah, um, yeah, at the time I was just trying to work. I was basically just trying to work, and drink driving is 100% the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember working in a small town, and we were at a bowls day, and we were playing on Australia Day and I was playing with an off duty officer, and somebody had a go at him for he was relatively young, relatively new. That was one of his first sort of rural postings, and they had a go at him for getting people from the golf club for drink driving,
Mm.
and he was like, we're a small town, and I just turned around to him. I said, "Yeah, but have you ever picked a guy out of a drunk drunk driving accident? Have you ever removed a deceased person from that?" And they were like, "No." I'm like, "Then shut up, leave him alone. He's not working."
Yeah.
Yeah, I have zero tolerance for that. I know most of us do. We've seen the results, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's in a small town. It doesn't take much to cop a bit of shit when you are doing your job like that.
Yeah. And I think this all goes back to what that inspector had been talking about before I went to
Yeah.
Cooktown. He said, like, being so junior, yeah, I can see how it could really affect you.
Yeah.
It wasn't too bad for me that like, as far as the arresting side of things goes, I didn't really have to deal with anyone that I knew too well on that side of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. All right. So we're finishing up at Cooktown, and we're off to Richmond. Why did we end up at Richmond? What was the circumstances?
Yeah. So towards the end of my time in Cooktown, my stepmother ended up committing suicide. Now, yeah, that was like massive. It was huge as far as it was very, very tragic and hard for me to deal with. But and as through your career, you'll notice that with suicide comes a big mess of things that yeah, and basically without getting into details, it was it became very difficult for me to be in my hometown after that. So yeah, I ended up starting to apply to get out of Cooktown, and yeah, Richmond came up. I think I applied for a few spots, but I was the only applicant for Richmond. And
Righto. So for those that don't know, Richmond is about 5 hours inland from Townsville towards Mount Isa. It basically goes Townsville, Charters Towers, Hewendon's your next major one, and then about and then about 110 k's away is Richmond. So I used to work at Hewenden, so I was almost your neighbour.
Yeah.
Worked out at Richmond a few times. They didn't
Yeah.
actually have an ambulance station when I was there. They still don't. It's a hospital-based ambulance. But yeah, we used to be their backup, and we used to help run them and train them, etc. So you've gone to Richmond. Now Richmond's got a beautiful little lake. How did you find Richmond?
You know what? I can remember driving out to Richmond. I've never been there. I actually don't think I've ever been. I hadn't even been to Charters Towers at that stage. I've never really been west. And I remember driving out through Charters Towers and then driving out through all the little small towns and feeling a little bit of dread. Driving out to Briar, and there's
how many officers are there in Richmond?
Two, an admin officer, and that's it. I remember driving into Richmond. There was a few initial impressions. One was definitely that nice Lake Fred Tritton. Bit of side knowledge there. In the middle of Lake Fred Tritton's a little island.
Yep.
And it's called Dead Man's Island, I believe, from memory. And there's actually a person buried in that little spot.
Yeah, right.
Now, I can't remember the exact story, but yeah, there's definitely a person buried in the middle there. So that's
there you go. I was not aware of that one. Yeah. So
that
it's like I said, 5 hours inland, basically almost in the desert, and it's got this beautiful little lake. There's now one at Hewenden as well, and it's stocked with barramundi, and people take their boats out there and tow people around on tubes, and it's this little oasis in a bush town. It's it's a beautiful little spot.
And I remember my first impression of Richmond, the people in Richmond, was going to I'm trying to remember, what was it called, Spa or an IGA? I can't remember the small little town. And I went in there and got a few items, and it's a tiny little shop. And then all of a sudden, there's this announcement over the PA system saying, with a young lady with a very, very Ocker accent going, "Can someone get another person to check out, please?" I was like, "Whoa, this is like it's something you expect in a major supermarket in the city," but they had this little PA system for this tiny little shop, and it was. They
could have just yelled out.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. But it was kind of. I was like, oh, this place actually. Yeah, it actually tries to keep a good image, and 100% Richmond does it. It's a very neat little town. A lot of great workers there. And then moved into our house there in Richmond, and it was good. Like I felt really, really comfortable.
Try and paint a picture for those that don't know the area. How big an area do you reckon you covered?
Oh, I should remember these stats.
It's the size of a small country for those people that these are huge areas.
I'm thinking, like, to drive from north to south of the division, from memory, is 2 hours each side of the station, and I think the other way was about an hour each way. So that gives you a bit of an idea as to how big it is.
So if you need backup, they're not coming in a hurry. If there's a major car accident, you're on your own there for a little while. You do have a doctor out there. You do have the ambulance-based clinic where the nurses come out, but there's a lot of stuff you're doing on your own for a long time.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. It's very you're I suppose romanticizing of the country and everything like that is very quickly brought back to earth the first time you do have to deal with something that's that's big. You're jelling on the spot, and it's Well,
so were you the officer in charge there at this stage, or you went as the second officer?
No, I was actually still a constable, but I was actually a senior constable, and there was an officer in charge, sergeant rank.
Yeah. Okay. And how we're in even a smaller town than Cooktown. There's less than 1,000 in. There's probably about 500 maybe.
In Richmond. I remember it was around 500. Yeah.
In the direct township, and then there's a lot of very large properties around. Did you fit into the community?
Yes, I believe I did. I mean, you're obviously not going to fit in with 100% of the community. I don't think you expect that anywhere. But yeah, I generally felt like I did. I got in quite quickly and started up a charity golf day out there.
Yep.
Yeah, to bring the community together. And yeah, that was very successful. Got an
I
Australian.
love these country golf day, these country
Yeah,
golf courses. Most people don't know they don't actually have grass greens; they have black sand greens.
yes, yes,
It's
yes.
yeah, it's a different experience.
Yeah, yeah. So the charity golf day, that was so much fun. Ended up getting an Australia Day award for it, which was quite cool.
Oh, awesome!
Yeah, and uh, yeah, I became president of the PNC out there. Yeah, got involved in the community.
Did the family fit in well?
Yeah, generally, I think we did really well. My young fellow went to prep there. I did prep in grade 1 there, and
Yep.
yeah, well, my wife got a job at the council in finance from memory. Yeah, and then yeah, we had a fantastic time in Richmond. That said, you still want those times where you could just be alone and not get
Yeah.
asked questions about.
What sort of roster did you find you were doing? Like, is it an on-call roster? Did you have
Yeah,
clear days off?
yeah. So the roster fluctuated a lot. We didn't really. I know that a lot of single officer stations now work, or two officer stations just work Monday to Friday 8 to 4, and then go on call after that. Um, Yeah, I think we had certain days we'd have office days, so the public could come in and do firearms renewals and do license testing and stuff for their car license
Yeah.
and stuff. But we were, um, yeah, on the weekends we did only work starting at like 6 p.m.
Yeah. Oops, sorry, I'm just had a bit of you froze on me then. Okay.
Yeah, same.
Or that's we'll sort that out afterwards. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So where are we? We're in Richmond. How did we go work wise? Did you enjoy working in Richmond?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. As far as in my, if you look back at my career, um, Richmond was the best time in my policing career. Yeah, it was
Yep.
like as far as my tenure there was for 3 years. Had a ball, made some good friends. I really thought that we worked hard to improve and increase the relationship between police and the community, and I think I can hold my head up high and say that I did that. So
Yeah.
and yeah, I think. Yeah, I spent a lot of time on call, which anyone that's done on call for emergency services will know it's not easy.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, my time in Richmond was fantastic.
Yeah. Okay. Any specific jobs you remember that you want to talk about?
Yeah, mate, there's a few. I think the one that comes to mind is the plane crash that I went to, which I remember it was I just gone over to New Zealand for a holiday with my family, and I was on my last day of leave, and I'm upstairs at home, probably about 3 or 4 in the afternoon, thinking, all right, I'll have my last bourbon for the holidays, and literally just poured it, and then the phone rings, and it's the officer in charge. I answer it, and he goes, Shane, look, I'm just letting you know, mate, that I'm headed up to a plane crash that's occurred up at can't remember the actual name of the location, but it's between Croydon and Richmond, about halfway. And he said, "Oh, the crash has actually happened in Croydon's area, but the officer there can't do it due to fatigue issues. So I'm going to go up." And I said to him, "Well, I said, well, what about the bloke that's filling in my spot while I was on leave?" And he said,
Yeah.
"Oh no, he's already gone back. He went back on Friday there." And I said, "Well, I'm not going to let you go that way yourself." And he goes, "Oh, I'm all right." I said, "No." And so I went, got put down my bourbon and which I didn't get to drink, and then went over to the station and then get it up to go deal with that incident. Where the information we had before we headed out was that one of the two occupants of the plane was deceased,
Yeah.
and that the other one they were trying to get on RFDS to get more help.
Okay. So you weren't on scene first then for this?
No. This one here, the first on scene were employees of
Yes.
and then first emergency response on scene was ambulance. Remember?
Yeah. 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 I think people underestimate how big these areas are, and often it could be volunteer ambulance officers, it can be volunteer fireys, it can be anything from anywhere that could be first on scene for these things. It's really these areas really do take massive community efforts.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember Richmond had a I know paramedics hate getting called ambulance drivers, but we actually did have
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
we actually did have an ambulance driver. He was
You did indeed. That was literally their job. Yes.
yeah. So so it was him and a nurse, remember?
Yes, you normally have a nurse come with you.
Yeah. And they were first there, and then I think Fireys got there before us.
Yeah.
One thing that really comes to mind is we're driving up to this location. We had no idea really where it was. We're just trying to find it on the way.
Yeah.
And, driving through all the dust on the road, dirt road, and not being able to see vehicles and stuff, like pretty much on top of them. And
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't think. Yeah, if you haven't driven in the West, you won't understand it. But anyone who has certainly knows what you're talking about.
Mhm.
So I've done a couple of plane crashes and they've never had good outcomes. But they are big jobs to manage as far as police was concerned. And then you've got to preserve the scene for people to come through, and the investigations and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, we did the whole job basically. We both parties ended up dying in that incident. One died on board QAS. The other one was deceased in the plane. So like you said, we had to deal with the cranial side of things and make sure that evidence was maintained there. But then we had to look after the scene overnight. So we ended up camping at the plane crash. And then the next morning, the officers who was in charge of that actual area, Croydon area, came down and relieved us of the scene. But then we had to go and deal with the cranial side because the
the paperwork side.
The deceased were taken back to Richmond, so we had to deal with all that. We got thrown a mental health job in the middle of all that, where we had to deal with a very unwell man that was walking off to go and kill himself, and then there was another job in the mix of it, and we're trying to do all the cranial side of things, and we're fatigued as all hell. huge job.
There's no training that prepares you for this stuff.
Nope.
Not for the physicality of it, or like that mental fatigue and the physical fatigue. You just, you just power through to as much as you can. But yeah, it's geez, you can end up nauseous and everything, can't you, from the fatigue. I think 22 hours is probably the longest shift I've ever done, and by the end of it, you feel nauseous.
Yeah, I just remember feeling numb, sort of. Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. Thinking back about it, you go, I didn't actually do that.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. But at the same time, you really don't have a choice. At the
Oh,
time, you don't have a choice. You
no.
just do it, and then you think about it afterwards. And yeah, like I said, you just reflect and go, "Wow."
I don't know if
Okay, so
anyone's.
you're in Richmond for 3 years. Good times, Obviously, there's some jobs that come through. You've finished it. So when you finished at Richmond, you were a senior constable.
Yeah, I finished my studies because for those that don't know, I think it's changed again now. I can't comment exactly what the system is now, but you had to do study primarily in your own time to get promoted to the next rank. So
Yeah.
with police goes recruit, constable, senior constable, sergeant, senior sergeant, inspector, and then hire from there. But to go to the rank of senior constable, you've got to complete study, which I believe is the equivalent of 3/4 of a, which degree was it? I'm trying to remember which degree it was. Yeah, one of the universities, if you went and submitted your police assignments to them, they give you recognized prior learning for, I think it was like 3/4 of, I can't remember
Oh
what the
wow,
degree is.
like justice degree or criminology
Yeah,
or
it was something
something.
like a bachelor in
Yeah,
policing or something. I can't remember what it was.
yeah,
Yeah, but I remember thinking, wow, the amount of work that we have to do in our own time to go to the next rank. Yeah, it's
yeah.
a lot.
And senior constable's the minimum you're allowed to work in these sort of rural places, is it? Like, is that how that's meant to work? I never worked with anyone
Yeah,
less than senior.
you're pretty much, you're right. So as I said before, when I was in Cooktown, I was still a constable. I got promoted to, well, not promoted. I got to act as a senior constable,
Yes,
with the
yes,
assumption that I'd go to that rank,
yeah,
which I did. So yeah, generally single officer stations and two officer stations, and there's no one there beneath the rank of acting senior constable or
yeah.
acting.
And that's simply because you need some hours under your belt. You need some skills under your belt.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it doesn't always end up being the case. You end up sometimes getting people that are very, very junior going to those spots. But for example, when I went to Woodville, I was acting senior constable then.
Yeah,
But I was literally like 2 weeks
still green.
out of yeah, my first year. So but in those circumstances you generally have someone that's very experienced working with you. So
Yeah,
um
it's not the single officer like you'll
yeah.
be left in Richmond or whatever. Okay, and then what was next?
Next was Claire.
Yeah,
So people yeah, like don't know, Claire's a little tiny cane farming community in the Burdekin area. So you've got Townsville. If you go about an hour south of Townsville, you've got a place called Ayr. And if you go for about a half-hour drive sort of to the west, I think it's south west of Ayr, you go to a little township close to the Burdekin River, and that is called Clare. And everyone
yeah.
goes, um, where do you work? Oh, Clare. Oh, Ayr? No, 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 Clare. And it just, yeah, that's a continual thing I used to go through. Um, yeah, Claire was, yeah, I remember going for a drive to go out and check out this place that I applied for, and seeing this tiny little town, and I was like, oh yeah, this will be all right. And then I remember meeting a former officer that had worked at Clare Station and having a bit of a chat about it, and him saying that one of the most challenging things you'll find is that the fact that you live on top of the police station.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, that can't be too bad at the time. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, well, I'll get to that. But yeah, arrived in Clare, was great to be able to be back closer towards the coast. How back up being only half an hour away now.
Yeah. Yeah, and Air, for those that don't know, has got about 15,000 people, so it's quite a large rural town. It's
Yeah,
got pretty much everything you need. It's vibrant little town, and it's got a few nice little beaches next to it, Alva Beach and all of those sort of places.
yeah.
Good fishing.
So I remember, yeah, and I at the time there's no way I could talk about it, but now, in the interest of helping others that come through, I remember when I first started there that I was very worried about the paperwork for the station. I was really worried about getting it right because you get audited all the time, and I wanted to have everything squared away. But though, as much as there was training for becoming an officer in charge, as it's called, um, that course I think had become null and void sometime well before I got there anyway. So there was no real training to actually run a station. Like I'd done bits and pieces at Richmond, um, but yeah, to be responsible for the whole station, and I think I built it up into a monster bigger than it actually was because
Yeah.
I wanted to do it really well, and I put a lot of pressure on myself. But I remember, yeah, being worried about setting everything up to the point where when the auditors came through, they'd go through and go, yeah, no worries. Like I, I wanted
So
to do
you
it
didn't have
right.
much. You didn't have much fear about doing the job of policing. It's the admin side of it and the cover your art. Not, you know what I mean. You don't want to get in trouble, kind of thing. Which is
Oh, don't get me wrong. I was still like having to deal with massive jobs is always in the back of the mind. Like
yes,
like you said before, we don't know what's going to happen. But I think at that time, the big monster was the actual paperwork in the station. And when I look back now, it's quite laughable because it's a single officer station. Like, you know, how hard can it be because it's only you and
yeah.
but
You
I don't
don't know
know.
what you don't know.
Yeah, and yeah, I basically I didn't want to get into any trouble. I wanted to do a good job. So um, yeah, and also feeling sort of awkward about asking for help as well. I think that's one big thing that I've noticed with police is that we seem to let our egos get in the way of actually asking for help.
Yep.
Um,
Is that a
yeah,
cultural thing?
I believe so. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No one wants to be wrong. No one wants to be weak. So yeah, yeah. In hindsight, yeah, maybe I should have asked for. I did get some help from other areas, but it was still big. And I was also on top of that expected to do registrations of vehicles and stuff like that. And out there, they had all
Yep.
sorts of different farm equipment and stuff, and they all had different rules and different things. And I didn't know what to do. Yeah, so it was I built the whole station paperwork up and everything like that into a big monster, and um, that was ticking away in the back of my mind
Yep.
very early on. Um, Moving forward though, like when I did have my station audits, they were fine. So,
Yep.
but still, I remember being very worried about it early on, and I think this is part of what leads into a big collapse. Which
So I just just looking back now,
yeah,
what's the difference, do you think, between Shane that started in the police and Shane that just arrived in Clare? What do you think the changes have been?
yeah. It's a very good question. What's the big changes? I think by that stage in my career, I think I've withdrawn myself a lot from my old friends, the
Yep.
people that I would probably normally go and have a yarn to if I was feeling unwell. I did have colleagues in the police that I could talk to, but I don't know if I spoke to them as completely honest as what I was feeling about what I was feeling and what was going on. I think that's the biggest change. I guess my patience for fools had gone out the window by that stage.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So
Your bullshit detector goes off a lot easier,
oh,
doesn't it?
that too, but just dumb things like, like someone that would ring you on, Sunday and say, "Oh, my license is expired. What are you gonna do about it?" kind of thing. And I'm just like, mate, no, like, come on,
Yeah.
like seriously, or someone that had an incident that happened like 10 years ago. That's exaggeration. Like 2 weeks before, they've done nothing about it until they wait until like
Last minute thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
last minute when you're not working to deal with. And I think I could feel myself at that stage. I've never been a particularly um, rude or blunt person, I don't think. But I could feel that change happening. And I
Yep.
could feel myself getting to that point where, yeah, I could feel myself potentially getting in trouble for speaking badly to a member of the public. Yeah.
Did your wife notice?
Yeah. So I think my wife's quite, she doesn't really talk too much about me or things like that. She's not she's not like that. I know she did because well, she couldn't have not noticed it. Like it was, yeah. But yeah, it was that first six. Yeah, basically we'll call it the first year of working in Clare Station where things went from good for like the honeymoon period, moving to a new station, to the reality of trying to deal with all the paperwork, and then yeah, getting deployed to Arakoon over Christmas that year. That was the big trigger point for
Yeah.
what happened. But yeah,
So you got deployed to Arakoon in 2016, is that right?
it was 2015. So I got yeah arrived in Clare around July 2015, and then I got asked to work up at Arakoon twice, and it wasn't, and the boss didn't pressure me into doing anything like that. It was my decision to go.
Yep.
He's asked me once, I think it was November. He said, "Oh look, there's some unrest up in Arakoon, and they're looking for officers to go up there and help out for a 2 week period. No pressure. Would you be keen?" And it was for like to work up there in mid-December, I think it was.
Yeah.
And then that didn't come to fruition. And then got another call, and yeah, this time it was to work from Christmas Eve, from memory. Yeah, Christmas Eve through to New Year's. And I'd
Was it with multiple people, like a proper deployment, or
yeah,
was it
yeah,
just
yeah. I'm trying to remember how many of us went up. I know that there was 2 of us from the Townsville area. There's a few from Cairns. I can't remember the exact numbers of people that
Yeah.
went up, but it was a considerable deployment.
Yeah.
And yeah, so having worked in Woodjall, having worked in, grew up in Cooktown, quite used to Indigenous issues and conflicts and stuff like that. I thought this will be fine. Yeah, man, was I wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's a very, very difficult place to work.
Yeah. So for those that don't remember, there was the Arakoon riots. I am not across what the cause of the unrest was. I don't recall it myself. If you want to fill us in on what you remember, that's fine. And I know this is the start of your issue. So obviously, just talk about what you're happy to talk about.
Yeah, cheers, mate. Yeah, look, I can't really recall the exact details of what led to the riots. I know it involved, there were two main families up in that town, and the best of my recollection is that one family killed a member of the other family.
Okay.
Then when I went up there, they were in a period of sorry time. So for those that don't know, that's basically a period of, from memory, 2 weeks, where if someone dies, respect is shown to the family, and there's no fighting, and there's just time to grieve. And then at the end of that sorry time, it can lead into conflict for retribution for what's happened.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I went up there at towards the end of the sorry time. Yeah, sorry if I lose my train of thought here. This is a bit of a
No, that's okay.
yeah. So I remember getting up there, getting given a tour of the town. I went up there, I was working actually with a guy I worked with at a Hewan, and he came up with me, so that was good. And it was fine when we first got there. There was no, because everyone was in sorry time. It was business as usual. And then, yeah, I remember I think I was doing night shifts the whole way through. I think it was the first night. Sorry, was it Christmas night? Yeah, anyway, we're told to go out and patrol Arakoon because the people were starting to get, ready for a riot, ready for a big fight. And I remember there was 3 of us in the vehicle patrolling through Arakoon. And after a period of time, in a nutshell, I was sitting in the back seat of an unmarked vehicle, 2 police officers in the front. We stopped at a location, and there was a sound of anger, like people ready to attack. And then there was a torch on my side of the car, and then I heard a smash, and I felt pain in my left shoulder, right in the shoulder. And I remember thinking that I'd been hit with a spear. Now, the reason why I felt that I'd been hit with a spear is because on both sides of the road, there were people lined up with weapons. And when I say weapons, they had absolutely everything from machetes to rocks to mangoes to whatever they could get their hands on. And there was spears, kids that looked like they were as young as 10, all with weapons. And yeah,
Tribal warfare.
Yeah, and I remember, and it was being so dark that you couldn't see very well. I remember feeling this pain in my shoulder, then going down into the footwell for protection, and then yelling out to the guys to get out of with colourful language, get out of there. So he drove away, and then I thought that I'd been hit, like I said, with a spear. So I'm saying to the guys, "Hey, can you get the spear out of my back, please?" And it didn't end up being a spear. We found that it was a block of concrete, probably big, that it hit me in the shoulder blade, and I was bleeding, and I think I got hit in the head as well. I'm not sure whether I got hit in the head from the thing or just from trying to force myself down the footwell. And went back to the station after that. Got some photographs taken. Couldn't get any medical assistance because the town was all bunkered down.
Yeah.
And
was anyone else injured, police-wise?
No, just me. I know that the officer in charge went out a couple of days later to try and stop people fighting, and he got assaulted himself with various weapons. And then a few days later, I was out patrolling, and then our marked police vehicle got chased by a mob of people with, once again, the similar sort of weapons. And I remember that a machete was flung towards my partner's side of the vehicle, and it damaged the outside of the vehicle, mark inside there. And yeah, they were trying to kill her.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, "Oh, you got guns, you've got tasers, you got this, you got that," and you're like, you just can't. I mean, we had support from, the CERT guys coming up from Brisbane and all the PSRT, which is the public safety response team people that
Yep.
basically the right squad were all coming up, but they were a fair way off, and yeah, what things that you might be able to do in the city, you can't do up there because you're going to well, you can't. You're gonna be scrutinised. On top of that, you're gonna be yeah.
Well, it's not just and I have had some other guys talk about. Okay, yes, you're defending yourself and you shoot one, then you run out of bullets before you shoot everyone else who's trying to kill you.
The harsh raw reality is that, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I couldn't contemplate a police officer actually shooting someone in those towns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
what we've seen
a
the
scary thought of the consequences.
the last few years of, like, especially on top of that, and this was before all that happened.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel very, very sorry for police that are placed in these situations where, yeah, they are authorized and justified to do certain things, but just can't.
Yeah. Yeah. So that you've done how long did this deployment last in total?
About 10 days, 2 weeks. It was, yeah.
Plenty long enough.
Yeah.
When you left, when you left the deployment, were things still going on up there?
I think because you feel sort of silly because when you're there, things are going on and there's riots going on, and then our riot squad and CERT get there, then all of a sudden people aren't so keen to fight.
Yes.
So you kind of feel like, oh, they're not doing anything. Like, what's the problem?
Why? Yeah. Well, they're not because you're
Yeah.
here, not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think they were still going on, and they had issues that went on after that.
Yeah.
I think there was not too long after that I think a school teacher was threatened with a machete. I think it was in 2016. I'm not certain on that though, but I know that they had ongoing issues. But yeah, I remember getting out of there and going, yeah, I'm not coming back here. It's just not.
So when you finished a deployment like that, what sort of debriefing do you do? Is there an operational debrief, or is there a psychological debrief? Is there any psychological care given?
Sorry, I think you're breaking up there, Peter. I can't hear
you. Not speaking English.
Okay. Look, I think there was a slight debrief in the station after I got assaulted. I don't really recall it, but yeah, I think there might have been. But there was, yeah, to the best of my recollection, there was no psychological debrief. Yeah.
So it's just go back to work, go back to your normal stations, and just get on with life.
Yeah. Yes, pretty much. Yeah, I remember flying back to Cairns, and then getting proper photos taken of my injuries by the police.
Okay.
I remember seeing a doctor about my injury, and I had a very bad experience with that doctor. Who basically dismissed it all and said that he'd been in the Indian Army or something and seen worse or something, whatever it was. Yeah. So yeah, really, really dismissed. And then sent back to working clear. I think I had a couple of days off, and then I was to my usual roster there.
How did you go when you got home? How do you think you were when you first got home?
Initially, I think I was just like happy to be home. Like I was just like, yep, I made it out of there. But I think it was around that time that the nightmares started to happen. And yeah, that's when I found out that living on top of a police station is definitely not a really good place to be when you're not doing particularly well. I remember having nightmares about my police station being surrounded by people with the same weapons. So that I saw an Arakoon, and I remember having dreams of pouring fuel all over myself and then lighting myself on fire. Yeah, and then the sleep just went totally out the window. Couldn't
Yeah.
sleep.
The trouble is when you lose that sleep, it's just the downhill of everything physically.
Yep.
And then the downhill of the mental. So that sleep, people underestimate how important a sign of the lack of sleep is. It's such an early indicator of a problem. And I think we're not taught that enough.
Yeah.
That when if you can't sleep, you can't heal.
Yeah. The icing on the cake was the doctor gave me very loose instructions. He said, you go back to work, but you can't drive long distances, was his words, which is really weird. So I probably should have said, hey, how long's long distance? You know, like, yeah. But I remember going to get called out to a job just outside of the town of Clare, the township of Clare itself. And then I was going to drive up to Ravenswood Station to go and see a colleague up there about an operation that we had coming up. And it was a road that I traveled 1,000 times. And yeah, when I was driving on the dirt road, a bull decided that it'd walk through the gully that I was about to cross. And I didn't see it until I was on top of it, hit the bull.
Yep.
And yeah.
Probably going 80, 100?
No, mate, no, it wasn't. I reckon because it was quite a steep gully. I reckon maybe
Okay.
60-ish, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Yep.
it was still enough.
1,000 kilos worth of bull.
Yeah, it was still enough to people that's like colleagues at some of the vehicles said that vehicle's written off for sure. But yeah, anyway, I got out of the vehicle, haven't expected to have to shoot the bull, but the bull sort of grunted and then ambled away. I don't think it would have survived much longer, but anyway, I was, yeah. And then it's funny how things work. I wasn't worried about myself, or the actual vehicle so much. Oh, the vehicle a bit, yeah. It was more the embarrassment of having to call up and get help because I knew that I'd get shit about it. And and it would have been like good, like people would have been just having a laugh, you know, like and with me.
Yeah,
but,
trying to lighten the mood and all that, but it doesn't help in the moment.
No, and I'm sitting there just going, I really just do not want to make this phone call. Anyway, so I ended up speaking to, I think I had just enough reception to call comms. And I got, and I remember them asking me how I was, and I said, oh, I'm all right. And then that's when I realized that my neck wasn't feeling too good. So yeah, I ended up getting transported out by ambulance and getting treated in hospital overnight. Yeah, and I think, yeah, it was around, I think those nightmare events before came after this accident. I think it was all, yeah, after that. And then I started getting this just feeling of impending doom. Yeah, my days were numbered. It was really bad.
Yeah.
I remember.
And you'd said,
there you go.
No, you'd said you'd sort of stopped reaching out to people earlier. So did you have any sort of support network at this time that you were using or didn't use?
Look, there were support networks available, but they weren't available to me for various reasons.
When I'm talking about support networks, I'm talking about your personal ones. I'm not talking about
Uh,
like Priority One or anything
yeah.
like that. I'm talking about, did you have a social circle that you could talk to at the time and you just withdrew from them, or
Yeah, I withdrew from pretty much. I think I had one police officer mate that I talked to about what was going on. Because I know that they'd been through something similar. But
yeah,
um, yeah, I could. There was no way that I could really talk to. Well, I felt there was no way that I could talk to friends that I, worked in tourism with or anything like that. It was,
they can't relate?
yeah, and I was like, I think the big fear behind it all is I'm going to lose my career. If I talk to someone about what's going on, I'm going to lose my job. They're going to say,
Yeah,
no, you're not fit anymore, you're gone. And there's two parts to that, losing your job and your income. And then there's the embarrassment of feeling like you failed. So those two big things there make it even, make it less desirable to want to reach out and get support.
yeah. Do you think that's an internal thing, or do you think that's a fact? Do you know what I'm asking? Do you think that is it actually a career limiter, or is it just something we internalize and put on ourselves?
Look, I'm going to say there is definitely a career limiting factor that I've seen. I've seen people that have put their hand up to say that they've had mental health issues get sidelined.
Yeah,
I think it might be changing
yeah,
slowly, but I think it's going to take a lot more people being open and honest about the problem. I think what you're doing, Peter, with these podcasts is fantastic, and it's things like this that will hopefully see things improve in that regard. I mean, the harsh reality of doing the jobs we do is that we're going to get affected by it. Let's stop.
yeah,
Let's stop pretending that people aren't getting affected by it, and just go, "Hey, it is a problem. Um, will it get better? Yes, but if we just keep pushing to the side, I think it's it's not going to improve."
yeah.
Um,
So when did you know that you needed help?
oh, I had been getting a little bit of support from my GP.
Sorry,
I
just to go back, during any of the previous few years, was alcohol ever a problem?
I've always been a bit of a binge drinker. Yeah, alcohol became a problem again a bit for me, but once I moved to the next station after Claire.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm going to say that the nature of being on call is that when you're not on call and you can have a drink, you really have a drink.
you
Uh,
do. Absolutely. Yeah,
yeah,
totally agree.
um, and it's instilled, well, was instilled in us that one of the best ways to have a debrief is to have a good drink with friends and talk about stuff. And
Yeah,
I can see that there's parts of that, yeah, fair enough. It does. It gives you a chance to have a chat. But um, yeah, I think things need to be improved as far as that,
it's not a medicine, is it? We
no,
think it is
no,
at the time, but it's not. It's
mm,
not a medicine.
no. So yeah, the question about when did I need help? Yeah, so I already
Yeah,
spoken to my GP. I was on medication by this stage, and I remember one day going to my GP, and he's asking me, "Are you all right?" And then I said, "Yeah." And then he actually reached out and touched me on the shoulder. He said, "Shane, are you all right?" And I broke down in tears.
yeah.
Mm. And yeah, that comes
It's
to
easy to
mind.
ask once. It's easy to
Mm.
ask once, and when you ask it the second time, yeah, that's when they. that's when they get through.
So that happened, and then I think he referred me to get some counselling, speaking with a psychologist, but it wasn't that moment that led me to actually go and make my big first step. It was one day I was standing on the back of police station's stairs. I remember standing there because I committed to go back out to Richmond to help with the charity golf day that I established, and I want to keep it going. And I was meant to drive out there, and posters just fell down. Yeah, I was meant to go out there and help them with the charity golf day, but I was not sleeping. I was feeling really, really unwell. I was having really, really dark thoughts. And I remember thinking, all right, Shane, this is the time now where I choose to either not be here anymore or I go and get help. So I remember, saying to my wife, I said, I think we need to go for a drive up to Townsville. So I went and saw a GP, told them about the thoughts that I was having. They said, oh, we can either get an ambulance or you can get your wife to drive you to the hospital. I remember going to the hospital, telling the triage what was going on, and they put me in a sort of a side waiting room.
Yep.
I know it was hours, but
Yep.
And I remember hearing the room, the emergency room was like, you could hear it was really busy. But after waiting for ages, they came back to me and said, sorry, we can't see you today. It will make an appointment for you to come back again. And I was just like, wow, is this for real? Like,
yeah. So when you're at your lowest of your low and you're feeling abandoned, you're feeling isolated, you're feeling like nothing, you then become nothing.
Yeah. And that was hard. Well, it was weird though, because by the end of it all, I'd started to feel better a bit. I don't know what.
Yeah.
But from there on, I had a fair bit of time off work. I did have a neck injury from the crash. I had some whiplash. I also had the injury from the shoulder from being assaulted. But behind it all was the worst mental health nightmare that I've experienced.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you what might be a confronting question, and you don't have to answer it.
Yeah.
You said you were out on the back porch or on the back stairs, and you said, okay, Shane, this is the choice, whether you end it all or you get some help. What made you choose to get some help?
I'm going to say it's my son. Yeah. I remember at the time there was a song out that I can't remember who sang it. There was a song called Once I Was 7 Years Old.
Yeah.
And I remember those lyrics at the time going over my head and thinking that it just triggered me to think that I can't not be there for my son. I've got to do something because he doesn't deserve it. And having been through my stepmother's suicide and the impact that it had on everyone, I was like, this is time for me to do something.
Bloody glad you did.
Yeah, mate,
thank you for answering that question. I know that's a tough one, but there's a lot of people that ask themselves that question every day, and it's important that they can see that there is another answer.
There is, yeah. And is it going to be easy? No, I'm not going to say it is, but things can get better. And they have in my life. So
so you took time off work.
So I took time off work. I was getting treatment for my physical injuries, but I wasn't really telling work about my mental health injuries because I was really worried about losing my career.
So, so you were on work cover for the physical side of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So so they weren't paying for any of your psychological treatments at this stage because you hadn't told them, or?
I think I was going through the public health system for
Yeah.
going to the what's Cambridge Street up here. I think that's where I was going to.
Yeah. The
That's
health campus.
Yeah. I was going there. I've been there a few times. I wasn't really getting too much in the way of psychological support. Medication was a big thing for me. The doctor tried a few medications. Just so everyone knows, well, I think one massive thing I want to mention is I didn't even know about this, and perhaps I could have been told about it, but there's a lovely mental health hospital here in Townsville called Townsville Private Clinic. And if I would have, my time period there could have been a lot easier if I had known about that hospital, because I went through a medication change that was horrific. And I know that if I would have been in there, it'd been a lot easier because it was very hard to get through. So yeah, if you are a first responder, don't just think that there's the public system. There's a private system as well, just to be aware of. And I can't thank them enough. But yeah,
as you know, I've been in that place myself, and I think if I hadn't been, I wouldn't be here with us now. I don't think it was we'll probably talk about this later on, but as we wrap up, but the public mental health system is just enormously overwhelmed, underfunded, understaffed, under everything. And if you're going through PTSD in the public system, Jesus Christ, that's hard. The private system, there's still long waits and there's obviously expenses, but if you have the option where you can go into a clinic and spend some time, yes, it's a psychiatric hospital. Yes, I used to joke about it and call it the nut house, and I'm going back to the nut house. But I was proud that I put myself in there, and it was the best thing I've ever done for myself. So there's a lot of people that don't realize those private facilities are out there, and they are covered by private health insurance and work cover. Obviously you need work cover approval, but it is 100% worth doing.
Oh yes. Yep. Yeah. So many things come to mind as you're speaking there. But at the time I wasn't aware that TPC existed. And I ended up using them later. But yeah, seriously, if you are going through a really rough time, and some of the things that I've mentioned have made you stop and think of it, definitely consider having speaking to a psychiatrist at one of those places there, and getting some support. Back to the original question. Sorry, Pete. What was
we were talking about you had your time off, and then you were getting some treatment at Cambridge Street, the campus, the health campus. And then it's basically, where did we go from there?
So I managed to fight my way back to health, to the point where I was back at work, doing a lot of work, putting out some pretty good results. And
were you well, or were you functional?
So I was doing a lot of work and getting results, but was I functioning? I don't think.
Were you functioning as a human being? Were you a person?
Yeah, I think I was. I think I got back to. I think I did quite well getting back to where I was. But yes, not long after. Oh no, it was a little while after that. My supervisor came to me one day and said, "Hey, we're going to be closing Clare Station down. Where would you like to go after this? Kind of thing. And I'm like, oh, okay. I remember at the time saying, hey, look, if there's a problem with something that I'm doing, I'm here. Let's talk about it. No, no, there's no problems. Anyway, so lo and behold, yeah, I start applying for different spots. I didn't want to go particularly far. I was hoping to try and get the one of the traffic officer spots in air, because well, it would generally be a breakaway from dealing with, you know, bodies and bad accidents and all
General
that sort of
duty
stuff.
stuff.
Yep, it was just going to be a break. It was actually going to be better money, and I wouldn't be on call 24/7 like I was for the last 7 years or so by that stage. And I just buy a house. Houses were cheap to buy in air. I was like, yep, we'll do that. That wasn't to be for various reasons, but I applied for promotions as well. I really wanted to try and, if I didn't get that, I was very keen to get 2 officer station spot and just once again build that rapport that I had in Richmond with the community and do that. And I was pretty passionate about that. So I started chucking resumes in, and very similar to what happened to me with the Fireys, I threw in for a spot called Normanton, which is up, for those that don't know, it's up in near the Gulf of Carpentaria in northwestern Queensland. People might have heard of a place called Corumba. It's pretty famous for barra fishing. Normanton's pretty famous for barra fishing too, but Corumba's the spot. I applied for a sergeant ship supervisor spot there, and got the opportunity to do an interview. Didn't think too much of it because the person that I was up against for the spot had 20 years more service than me. So I was thinking, yeah, I've got no chance here. Lo and behold, I ended up getting the spot and transferring to Normanton. That happened in early December 2017.
Yep.
One thing that had started happening behind the scenes here was my hand started breaking out in a skin condition. Now, I didn't know what it was. I'd been and seen my GP, and I think I'd started consulting a specialist, and he wasn't sure what it was. And then eventually I got diagnosed, I think it was more after I moved to Normanton, with psoriasis.
Yep.
And it was on my fingers and thumbs at the start, and then it spread to my feet. And it got to the point where while I was in Normanton, where I couldn't walk without limping, and my hands, I remember at times when I was signing out my taser for the shift, when I was trying to fill out the logbook, I'd bleed onto the logbook.
Yeah, right.
But I couldn't put gloves on because that aggravated it further. Yeah, so that's something to watch out for as well if you're struggling.
Stress-induced psoriasis.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, moved to Normanton. Once again, honeymoon period. Get there, everything's good, and yeah, it became very challenging. I'm not going to discuss what happened in Normanton too much, but I'll just say that it was, yeah, very distressing. And yeah, whatever happened up there, it's in the past now. I'm not upset or angry anyway.
So did you seek help when you were in Normanton or when you got back?
I kept seeing my GP up there.
Yep.
And they were yeah, that they were supportive in many ways, but at the same time not helpful, I suppose. That's the best way to describe
Empathetic
it.
with no solutions.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah. In the end, I towards the end of my time in Norton, I couldn't work anymore because of my psoriasis. Like
Yep.
it was bad, and
Yep.
um, I remember feeling that people were doubting why I was off sick
Yep.
at the time. So I put a post on Facebook with all my injuries, asking for advice about how to deal with it.
Yep.
And um, yeah, I think that people's opinions of me taking leave had changed because they actually saw how bad it was. Um,
Yep.
yeah, I remember there was a particular trigger point that happened, and that night I I remember thinking very seriously about going and taking my own life
Yep.
at the station. But I ended up just drinking a heap of booze and taking some medication, more than the prescribed amount. And yeah, anyway, I ended up it's a bit of a blur this bit here because it gets a bit messy, but I ended up going to Townsville to get more support from my psoriasis. And while I was
Yep.
there, I caught up with the police psychologist up there who I formed a relationship with, a professional relationship with when I was in Cooktown after the drowning. And yeah, she so I saw my physical injury. She's like, "Oh, you should be on the disability support pension, not not." And I was like, "Yeah." And yeah, she
So
referred me.
you weren't on work cover at this stage?
No. I hadn't
Okay.
applied at that stage. No, no.
Okay.
The exact timings here are a little bit, yeah,
Yeah.
skew. But yeah, I don't think I was at work over that stage. I went and spoke to a clinical psychologist. I believe I was diagnosed with PTSD then, or suggested that I had PTSD. And then, yeah, I ended up getting told to go down to Townsville to get admitted to Townsville Private Clinic.
Yeah.
Um, and I was so fortunate to get um, the psychiatrist that I did. His name is Dr. Mushtaq Mohidin. Um, he is absolutely amazing. He looks after first responders and veterans, and he does an amazing job. Yeah, diagnosed with PTSD, and admitted. I think the first admission was close to 3 months.
Yep.
Um, and I think the biggest thing there is, there's the medicine, there's all the sessions and stuff you can go to dealing with PTSD and trauma and stuff. But I think it's the realization that you're not the Lone Ranger when you get there,
Yep.
and you realize that there's so many other people in there. When I was in there, there was an ex-copper in there. I got to know and discuss things a bit with, and then there was so many veterans.
Yep.
When you share stories with them, you realize that you're all in the same, well, in a very similar battle.
Yep.
And I think that in itself frees your mind a bit because you go, hey, okay, it's not so much me, it's what I've been subjected to that's caused these issues. So
And it's my injury. It's not my thoughts.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think it's really important that people understand what it's like in a private facility. So, I mean, same as you, I can only talk about the Townsville Private Clinic. I think a lot of people think when they're thinking about a psychiatric thinking, a very sterile, very white, movie-driven kind of,
yeah,
horrible place. It's not. It's comfortable. Yeah, the beds are plastic, so you need good mattress topper. That's the biggest recommendation I'd have.
Okay.
The one you'll go in there, and the initial things that I noticed, and I'm sure you were the same, is everything is so that you can't. There's no hang points, so the taps are different, the spouts are different,
Yeah.
door handles are different. They're
Yeah.
all designed so that they minimise the chance of anyone self-harming. But people are there because they want to be there. They're not committed there. It's a voluntary place. If you
Yeah.
are in fact suicidal, you will get transferred. If you're high risk, you will get transferred to an acute hospital at the time. But it's not. It's more like a hotel than this clinical
Yep.
chlorine thing,
Yep.
which I think was my biggest fear going in.
Yeah, I totally agree there, mate. That's exactly what I felt as well. I think that the two things that might confront someone that's been a first responder, especially a copper and a paramedic that are used to looking for hang points and stuff in areas where they go to. Yeah, that is quite confronting when you first go to your room and you see that everything's designed so that you can't. The chances of self-harming in there are a lot less.
Yes.
Yeah. The second thing that might be a bit confronting, which was particularly confronting for me, was when you first go in to the room, they do a search of your bags.
Yeah.
And I think they did a search of my person. I can't remember exactly, but having been a police officer, searching was something I did on other people, not me. So that
Yeah.
was, yeah, a bit confronting. So if you are going into one of these places, expect that, but it's not for a
Yeah.
bad reason. It's
No.
because yeah.
And they'll take your razors off you. And
Yeah.
when you want to have a shave, you have to go to the nurse's station and get and grab the razor. But it makes sense.
Yeah.
Like it sounds horrible. They're friendly. It was, you end up having some really good conversation with the nursing staff. The biggest pain in the ass is the old when they pop you're asleep and they'll pop the torch in to make sure you're still kicking.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, but that's just a health and safety thing. But yeah, little things like that where it's abnormal, but but you adjust to it quite easily. You just, I'm a lazy bugger. I'll shave as minimal as I can, so I'll just go get the razor when I want to.
Yeah.
But then you just go, you do your shave, you give it back. It's just about safety because you've got to remember why people are in there. We're in there because we're pretty much at the lowest we can be. We have risks, and therefore minimizing opportunity. Not having bin bags, little
Yeah.
things like that. Things
Yeah.
that when you notice them, you're like, yeah, okay, I'm in a hospital
Yeah.
for mentally unwell people, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
And then it's lots of day groups. So during the day, they have a timetable of lots of topics, lots of different groups, and you choose whether or not you go and you choose whether or not you participate. And I think the first week, so I went in for 2 weeks, then out for 2 weeks, and then in for a course. And I think for the first week, I didn't participate. I was just there to try and get some sleep and get my head in order.
Yeah.
And then I became part of the program and I got a lot out of it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, something that was, I remember sitting in Townsville Private Clinic in the art class because they have not just not just your standard sort of short courses on mental health, but they also have things like art, yoga, music sessions, all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And I remember
sound bowls and all sorts of meditations.
Yes. I remember one of the funny things that I was sitting there thinking, and I actually even said it to the art teacher. I was doing a painting, and I said to the art teacher, I said, a few weeks ago, whatever it was, I was, at a crime scene worrying about this, and this. And right now my biggest problem is knowing whether I need to add some more white to make my yellow go a bit lighter for the painting that I'm trying to draw. So but one thing I will also say is that a lot of blokey blokes might, sort of stick their noses up about art or yoga or something like that, give it a go. Just
Absolutely.
give it a go. Art, um, yeah, I went through a phase when I was in there and for a long time where I was painting all the time. And it was so good because you can get right into it and it just, yeah, gives
Yeah.
that mind the calm.
I don't have an artistic bone in my body and I can't draw a stick figure, but they have therapy. They do it where they can give you a challenge of, if you want, you can draw something that's represented or paint something, or they've just got those adult coloring in books and they
Yeah.
are incredibly therapeutic.
Yeah.
Incredibly therapeutic.
Yeah.
And as someone who's never done it before, I don't know why it works, but it works. And I guess it just stimulates a different part of your brain.
I think it's also because working in high stress jobs that we have, the brain's going 1,000 miles an hour all the time. But when
Yeah.
you wind back down, you're focusing on one thing. I think it gives that mindfulness that just we probably don't access enough as first responders.
Yeah. So did you do the trauma course while you were in there?
Yeah, I didn't do it while I was in there. I did it as an outpatient.
Okay. So as they offer a 4-week inpatient or a 10-week outpatient course. I've actually done both and they're brilliant. So yeah, talk about the course.
Yeah, so the course I did was yeah, so I already completed one admission and yeah, got enrolled in this trauma course. It was a group of I think it was all blokes from memory. Yeah. And I was the only first responder in there, but everyone else was a military veteran. And the once again, I think the biggest thing to take away was when you don't necessarily go in and share big details about your particular traumas, but when the facilitator talks about different aspects of PTSD and the effects it does, everyone nods their head, and
Yeah.
you really do
Things
realize
just
that
start to make sense, don't they?
you're not alone. Is the biggest, I think, one of the biggest things.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've developed a good friend out of some good friends, but the one particular good friend out of that course, a military veteran, and yeah, we're still in contact now. And yeah, it was a really great course. And yeah, it's not like we're going to tell you this kind of sort of course. It's very much you're involved all in the process, and yeah, definitely came out of that with a better understanding of PTSD, depression. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that they also exposed you to different therapies. So they get guests in. We did some, I don't know about you, but we did some pool therapy.
Yes.
We went and played wheelchair rugby.
Yes.
We had somatic therapy, which is something I'd never heard of. And it's basically, I guess you'd call it like EMDR, but for the body. So
Yeah.
it's using physical senses and with the thing that the body holds trauma. And dietitian comes in and talks about food and mood and things like that. So they open it up to a wide variety of things that holistically all can make a difference. They're not shoving anything down your throat, but they're just saying these are the things that are available if you want to go down that track.
Yeah. Yeah, mate. Just something else that just came to mind there as well. While I was in Townsville Private Clinic, there was a number of times where I developed severe chest pain, and I needed to get checked out at the public hospital. And every time I go up to the public hospital, I was feeling really embarrassed that I'd be recognized by someone. So if you are thinking, oh gee, I really do need to get some support, but you're putting it off because you're worried about being seen or going to the hospital and someone recognizes you, all you have to do is let the paramedics know that you want to be kept away from other people. And every time I've asked for it, it's always been accommodated. So I'd get curtains closed off and all that sort of stuff just to protect my privacy, just so in case I was worried about seeing one of my colleagues there or something like that. Um,
100%. That's one of my worst nightmares as well. And there would be nothing for them to keep you in the back of the ambulance until you're ready to go straight through, type of thing. So,
yeah,
yeah, I know when I was in the job, if somebody needed that type of support, that it's not a hard thing to do.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it also, if you're a copper or a fiery, paramedics, most likely, as we're finding out, have actually either been through what you're going through or will have a great understanding of it. So don't feel trapped or embarrassed or just, there are options, and that's the biggest thing to remember. There's options rather than harming yourself. There are options to get better.
100%. I don't think anyone can be in any of these jobs, any of these high trauma occupations, and not have elements of injury. And it
Yeah,
is PTSD is an injury. I had, you know, I've just recently done a 9-month catch up after our course for our trauma course, and they have actually started using it as a post traumatic stress injury, because
yeah,
it's not just something you just pick up. It's something that's caused this issue,
mm,
and by acknowledging that you're an injury, and by society acknowledging that it's an injury, kind of gives you that little bit of ownership that this is an injury. If it was my arm, I will do the work, I will get it better. There is
yeah,
a life post PTSD as well.
mhm,
I'm still going through it. I don't think I'm by no means fixed, recovered. But you can move past it. So once at what stage were you medically retired? You came out of the clinic, and so you went
yeah.
in the clinic on work cover?
No, my work cover claim was completed while I was in the hospital. I think when I got
Okay.
admitted, I had I paid an external organization to do my work cover claim, um,
Yes.
and I think they were all communicating saying, "Hey, he's going to have a work cover claim. Get him admitted. If he doesn't, he's got private health insurance. But for the time being, let's just say that he's going to get work cover claim approved." And my work cover claim was approved first go, which is quite rare with mental health injuries, but mine was approved. And uh, yeah, so medical retirement, that is that's a process. Yeah, so um, I was officially medically retired about 2 years after my injury,
Yeah.
um, my final injury, which was October um, in 2018. Um, yeah, so it's a painful process. If you're on work cover, you have to deal with that process, and then basically after they try and heal you, if you don't get better, your psychiatrist may say that you're um, not fit to return to work. And I,
Stable and stationary.
yeah, so when you're dealing with work cover, you will possibly have to go to what's called a medical assessment tribunal. I had two of those. Um, the first one I tried to do, after about 5 minutes, the doctors said that I wasn't fit to take part in the tribunal because I was obviously too unwell, which I
Okay.
was. Um, I went off at them basically, saying, and
Yeah.
I said it respectfully. I said, "Look, I'm not angry at you personally, guys, but um, I'm really angry here because I'm not supposed to be getting interviewed. It's my job to interview people, not to be interviewed." And yeah, I just said, I see you guys as the enemy. I'm not. Yeah, that's how
I
I
know,
was.
my rational brain knows that's
Yeah,
not the case, but my
yeah,
my emotional
yeah,
brain is.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, then I had a second one, and they deemed that I was it 9% totally and permanently disabled.
Yeah.
Um, and then it's a case of using lawyers.
9% of 380,000 or whatever the statutory amount is in law. That's what they offer.
Yeah, I think it's 27. Oh no, it was $3,000 per percentage, I think.
I think it's just under
Yeah,
$4,000 per
yeah.
percentage. Yeah.
And then they give you an offer, which, I mean, you really do have to laugh at it, because if you don't,
Yeah.
it's going to hurt.
Yeah. So for those that aren't aware, 100% is dead. Or if
Yeah.
you're a full quadriplegic, that's counted as 100%. And I think by law that's about $387,000. Don't quote me on, but it's in that ballpark. And then, so whatever the medical tribunal deems you at, and like Shane said, 9%, it's 9% of $387,000, and that is an amount set by law. So there's no variety to that or anything, and it's insulting.
Very insulting. Yeah. So I had legal advice, and we took my employer to through the legal process and managed to settle out in court. The whole process is it's just soul destroying. It's you've got to go through.
Adversarial.
This doesn't seem to end, and it's back and forth, and seeing different psychiatrists and getting reports done, and yeah, it's hard. Unfortunately, it's necessary at the moment to go through all this. Long term, the organisation that's on the side behind me, we really hope that we can get some change in that area. But at the moment, it is what it is. Have to really try and separate.
No, I was just going to say, so obviously any terms of any legal things are confidential, so we can't discuss those. But would you encourage those that have a claim to see that claim through? Obviously, dependent on their own legal advice.
Definitely. Have a speak to a lawyer, if not one. Now, this is not just from my own experience. This is from having been through the system and spoken to loads of others that are going through the system or looking to go through the system. Definitely speak to at least one lawyer. Now, if you get the first lawyer that speak to, they're not interested. Like, I spoke to 3 firms before I had one that said yes. Now, the lawyers are looking at different things. Some want just the straight, as we call as a copper, a walk-up pinch, where you've got all the evidence is there, you don't have to do any work, it's just going to be easy. Whereas others, they're prepared to go to the hard yards and make sure that you're represented well as a client. It might take you a while to find that particular lawyer, so be it. But don't just give up if you get a no first go, because that also can be soul destroying, thinking, gee, I'm not worth it. Yeah.
Okay, we're just going to take a 2-second break, go to the toilet, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about Team Code Blue.
Sounds good, brother. Yeah.
All right, and we're back to we're talking forever, so we needed a little pee break.
Yeah.
All right, so where were we? We were talking about the clinic, the work cover, sorry. So get the legal advice, go through the process. Like you said, you went to three firms.
Yeah, 3 firms. I went through like the big names. I contacted them first, and then ended up with a firm in Brisbane. And even during that process, even though I'd chosen the firm, they amalgamated with someone else. And then, I think I went through, even once my case had been accepted, 3 different individual lawyers within different firms. So there's 2 parts to an injury as far as claiming goes. There's your work cover part, and then there's your potential. Well, if you have insurance, some people don't for some reason, but if you have insurance with your superannuation, there's a second part there. So I ended up getting 2 different lawyers, or one for each part. And definitely look at your superannuation, total permanent disability. It's a shame that it's set up the way that it is, that your benefit does seem to decrease after you turn 40.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, especially now, how people are working a lot longer. Yeah, that's yeah, definitely get a lawyer to look at your matters and then and proceed from there. But don't be disheartened
And
if
if
you get
they
told.
don't give you the answer that you like, yeah,
Yep.
find another one.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And yeah, and the other question is that people think all the time is, oh, how much are we going to get? And that's something that people that have gone through the system can't disclose because they've often
No.
signed a non-disclosure agreement.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely go through the process.
Yeah. What you get and what you deserve are two totally different things.
Oh, that too. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's a very, very adversarial process. And yeah, it's I've got all this stuff to look forward to. Can't wait. Yeah. But knowing people that have gone through it and what's coming is great. So having that support out there, knowing what's coming, I think going into it blind is absolutely bloody terrifying.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, having people behind you that have been through it. So then we come to Team Code Blue, which is how I met Shane. So Shane is the president of Team Code Blue, which started off as another organisation or a solo organisation. So tell us your spiel. What is Team Code Blue about?
The primary goal behind why I started Team Code Blue was to provide hope and community support for first responders who are in crisis, whether it be from health issues, from loss of employment through injury, or just terrible things that life throws at them, like having their house burnt down, having their car stolen, some of the things that they probably go to as a first responder, and to have them know that the community cares about them, respects that they have a tough job, and that first responders are there all the time for the community. So we believe that when our first responder needs some help, the community should be there for them as well. And that's the basic premise behind what Team Code Blue stands for. How it all started, it goes, I'm not sure how long I'm going to talk about this, but it goes back
As long as you want.
Yeah, it goes back when the initial seeds for Team Code Blue were planted was back in 2015, when I was a police officer in Clare. I started a charity golf day out there, as I mentioned before, and I've noticed through the police email system that there are numerous auctions of sporting memorabilia for various fundraising causes that are going around. I thought, oh, I wonder if I reach out to the North Queensland Cowboys, I can get them to donate us jersey for our cause. My cause at the time was raising money for ovarian cancer, because one of the local families had their daughter pass away from ovarian cancer. I thought, oh, I'll reach out. Lo and behold, they said, no, we can't give you a jersey, but if you buy one, we'll get it signed for you. So I did that and then auctioned it through the police email system. So that's where the idea about sporting memorabilia came from. And then fast forward to, I ran that golf day 2 years in a row, did the same thing 2 years in a row. But then I didn't do so much of that work until after I got injured. So going through the medical retirement process, as we sort of touched on, is quite daunting. And without going into details, it feels like you have to actually go broke to get through it, because that's just how the insurance system works with work cover, unfortunately. So having that experience myself, and also hearing from others who were particularly troubled by the whole system, and then seeing that there wasn't perhaps enough support from other organizations about, people going through medical retirement, as well as officers that were having battles with cancer and all sorts of things. I thought, well, there's room for improvement here. So I initially started meeting the Cowboys players and just buying a football or something like that, and I'd go and get them to sign it. And then I started a Facebook page called Supporting Those Who Support the Community, and I'd auction these pieces of sporting memorabilia for individual causes. When I first started, I wanted to help the whole world. I was helping nurses. I helped a nurse that was injured in Bali in an accident. I helped a police officer that went through a particularly difficult time in the Northern Territory. And I did all these little fundraisers. Then I started meeting the away teams as they come up to Townsville. I'd go and sneak off where they were staying and get some stuff signed, and then I'd put it up on the page and then auction it. Started out with just a few followers, and I got sort of questioned as to what I was doing sometimes. Oh, how do we know you're actually doing the right thing here? And I said, trust me, I'm doing the right thing. And then here we are, fast forward to 2024. We're now a registered not-for-profit organisation called Team Code Blue. He is very kind, and he's our public relations officer. We have a Facebook following now of nearly 2,500 people, and they're dedicated followers, the ones that stick in there. We are now starting to get, there's a lot of hard work that goes on, getting stuff signed, going to training sessions and stuff, but we're getting the odd donation from sports people now, so we can auction their personal match worn items and stuff on our page. But we're helping Queensland First Responders, and we're focusing on, and we've just started in New South Wales as well, but we're helping fireys, ambulance officers, paramedics, yeah, and then we're also helping police that are in crisis. So very proud to say that we've raised well in excess of $40,000 now to help out people in need. And yeah, we're growing. We've got a big drive behind the scenes, and Peter's been doing some fantastic work in this area to try and improve the conditions of medically retired first responders. We believe that they deserve better support. We believe that they shouldn't have to sue their employer to prove that they've got injuries from work, because it's well known that by the very nature of our jobs that we're going to get PTSD or some sort of mental health problems. So yeah, I might let you take over from there, Peter.
Yeah, no, that's 100%. Yeah, I came on board when I saw, I think, I don't know if it was an article or just an auction going on in the Facebook page, and it was at a time where I needed something positive. I was off work, on work cover, as I still am, and I needed something. You get caught up in your own negative journey, and look, there's certainly times where you have a roller coaster where you can contribute, and then there's others where you've got nothing to give at the moment. And Shane is very understanding and patient with me in that regards. But it's a really positive thing to do. The community, we know the community supports us, and all first responders. The community doesn't generally realise that we need to battle so hard to get help after we're medically retired. You know, I've met and talked to ministers, emailed federal and state politicians. It's a federal issue because it's over 100,000 paid first responders. And that's not excluding people, and that's excluding people like corrections and SES, that also are very high risk in the, serving their communities. So there's some great volunteers we've got. We always need more. If you're in Townsville or any other city and you have access to a football team or sporting team of anything, we want their signed merch, because that's how we fund it. We've donated to, we've got a paramedic that's just had cancer or was diagnosed with cancer just after the birth of her baby. We managed to give her, we raised over $1,900 for her. We've had police officers that we've donated, hundreds into the thousands of dollars as well, where we're doing specific auctions and campaigns for specific people. But for a lot of people, it's just you offer the help and they're just like, thank you, I don't need it, but thank you for being there. Thank you for offering it. Thank you for being that shoulder. And that's as important as any financial contribution to a lot of people, knowing that they're not alone and knowing that, and that's another reason I've done this podcast. I've mentioned it very early in my introduction. I started this podcast because I wanted people to know they weren't alone in the journeys that they're going through and the symptoms that they've got. Just after my last podcast with Lara, I got a text, an anonymous text from somebody saying, thank you, I've just listened to your 4 podcasts. I've got some of your symptoms. I've got a similar, a similar sort of pattern of stuff going on, and I've reached out for help. That is why we do it. That is why we do Team Code Blue. That is why I'm running this podcast. It's not about politicizing anything. It's about getting help. We don't care who the politics are. We just want to get help for the people that literally put their lives on the line to serve their communities. And it's been an honor to do it. And there's a lot of work to do. There's great, so Shane, what's the dream for Team Code Blue?
Yeah, I got asked that question not long after I started, and they said, "Oh, how big do you want to go with Team Code Blue?" And I think they got a bit shocked when I said worldwide. So we've got it bad here. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not great. It's a hard fight for first responders. But I've got a paramedic friend that works over in the Philippines who I went to school with, and he saw some of my stuff on Team Code Blue, and he said, "Oh, how's things over there?" I said, "Oh yeah, this is this." And he goes, "Over here, we don't even get to speak to a psychologist."
Yeah.
At all. Like as a paramedic. So when I heard that, I was like, yeah, this problem's bigger than just Australia. It's something that we need to look at as a human race. I think we need to look after our protectors more.
The world is quite good at looking after its defence forces.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, some in the Defence Forces and veterans will totally disagree with that, and I get their point. But, overall, there's a huge bucket of money that goes into our Defence Forces, and we do not begrudge them at all. We do not want a single cent taken off them. This is not an us versus them thing. We are all brothers and sisters. So we would like to be thought of in a similar way.
Yeah, I agree with you, mate. And both you and I have spent, a lot of time healing with veterans, and the conversations are always, hey, what you're dealing with, when they're speaking to me, they say what you're dealing with is a war zone. You've actually been to a war zone, and when it's said like that, you go, yeah, actually, when you mention it like that, it actually is. And yeah, I'd like to see one day that when a police officer signs up to go and do their job, they know 100% certain that if something happens, if they see that one too many bad incidents, that they know that they're going to be okay. They're going to be supported. They're going to be looked after. At the moment, to generally get the support required, you've got to use lawyers, which I feel is a little bit unfair. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, we're gonna wrap this up. It's been a long podcast, but Shane, thank you for your honesty. Thank you for your story. This is why we exist, is so that people can see what we're going through. My goal is to wrap up every podcast with a positive. So I want you to tell me give me a really positive police story that you did as a police officer. Something that when you think of brings a smile to your face, that I made a difference. It's funny, isn't it? Because we spend so long thinking about negative stuff.
There's a few. I think that running that charity golf day in Richmond was a highlight, because it got the community involved. Some parts of the community that wouldn't normally hang out with the other part all came together. We played golf together. We were all dressed up in silly costumes. I think I dressed up as Austin Powers, and we had lots of fun, and took the focus away from the negatives in life and painted the positives, and managed to raise $8,000 in our first year. So
that's awesome.
Like a record or something for Ovarian Cancer Australia for a community event or something. So that's the big positive that I think I can look back on.
Excellent, mate. And if people want to find out more about Team Code Blue, where do they go?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that. Definitely jump onto our Facebook page. It's where we're most active. And that's just Team Code Blue Inc. on Facebook. Team Code Blue Incorporated. And then
you'll know it. It's got big blue screen, and it's got some signatures on it, and it's a busy site. There's a lot of stuff that goes on it, but it's we need support. We need people to share paid posts and that sort of thing. We want to reach all around Australia.
Big thing we're chasing at the moment. So we obviously auction sports memorabilia. One of our biggest outlays at the moment is actually buying the sporting goods to get signed and personalised. If you know someone that has a sports store, or if you are from a sports store, we'd really love to hear from you so that we can keep doing our wonderful work. And that's muchly appreciated. We also do have a website, teamcodeblue.org. It is being developed at the moment as we speak, and we're very thankful to Toe Media for that.
Perfect. So if you know someone, or if you know someone that knows someone, get in touch with Shane or the admin team on that Facebook page, or you can send an email to president@teamcodeblue.org, and we'll put you in touch with the people that need to be, and we'll get some things rolling. Shane, once again, mate, thank you. I know it's been a long one, but I really appreciate you opening up, sharing your story, and being so honest. I love how much work you put into helping other people, and I look forward to keep going on this journey with you, brother.
Cheers, Peter, and I want to say thank you as well, mate, for getting this podcast going. When I first heard you said you're going to do it, I was like, oh, that's a big task, and it's going to be pretty confronting for you as well, because you are going to be talking about lots of other people's traumas, which I'm sure must be activating for you at sometimes. But I think it goes back to that age-old story: if not me, then who? So if we don't do it, who's going to do it?
Absolutely, mate. All right. Well, I love you, brother, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you got any feedback, we've got the Facebook page, Beyond the Call, or email beyondthecallpeter@gmail.com. We're after feedback. We're after suggestions, contacts, all that sort of stuff, so that we can keep doing what we're doing. So, all right. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and we will talk to you soon.